Chapter 356, New Changes. Ask him what level of gray scar art he has cultivated to. Zuemo immediately detected Pu Yao's urgent tone when he suddenly spoke. After being in contact with Pu Yao for a long time, Zuemo gradually learned some of Pu Yao's habits. Usually, Pu Yao looked down his nose at the great majority of matters, but when it was something that was of great help to him, he would not disguise his urgent desire. Speaking from this perspective, Pu Yao was very straightforward. However, the great majority of the time, his straightforwardness was not very easy for a person to accept. For example, he did not disguise his desire for the golden souls. Also, for example, if Zuemo did not get the golden souls for him, then what was waiting for him were countless pitfalls. Pu Yao's threats were bare naked. Zuemo knew this very well. He coughed lightly, and said, "What step have you reached with your gray scar art?" Sangze was very shocked. Gray scar art, the other new gray scar art? Nan Yu detected Sangze's shock from the side. She thought inside, was this another Yao art like the South Sky Arrow art? Darren was really mysterious. Sangze tightly stared at Zuemo as he wanted to see hints from Zuemo's face. But Zuemo was a very experienced person. He stiffened his face, and copied Pu Yao's expressionless face very well. Inside, he muttered, "I was such a pure and generous person before. After staying so long with Pu Yao, I'm now skilled in conning and lying." Of course, he would not feel any guilt. He was trying to act out his role properly. Sangze could not find any clues. Since the other could say the name of the gray scar art, he should not be speaking nonsense. Of the many Yao arts that existed now in the Gray clan, gray scar art was very unnoticeable. Those youths of the clan who had the slightest talent would not choose this Yao art as their primary cultivation. They would like Yao arts such as gray sea art or gray cloud art that were more powerful. But as the grandson of the clan leader, he knew more than normal Gray clan members. For example, the Council of Elders had never stopped their secret studies of the gray scar art. The Gray clan had so many Yao arts, but why did the other just mention the gray scar art? Countless thoughts flashed through Sangze's mind. He lowered his head and said respectfully, "This one has not cultivated gray scar art." Not cultivated? Pu Yao stilled. Zuemo reacted rapidly and stilled as well. You have not cultivated gray scar art? Has the Gray clan created some other powerful Yao art? Pu Yao murmured to himself. His brows furrowed, and he was slightly surprised. Has your Gray clan created some powerful Yao art? Zuemo learned and sold it at the same time. Sangze gritted his teeth. Not created new Yao art, but this student is stupid and has not been allowed access to gray scar art. His heart beat wildly, his term for himself changing from this one to this student. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao's brow smoothed as he released a breath. Tell him you will teach him gray scar art, in exchange for 5 golden souls each year. You know gray scar art? Zuemo asked Pu Yao suspiciously. That thing is very simple, it just curves from normal. Having found his confidence, Pu Yao waved his hand with bravado. Zuemo was both trusting and suspicious. Pu Yao really knew too many things. However, his thoughts did not affect his reaction. He lightly coughed, "I happen to know a bit about cultivating gray scar art." Sangze felt a strong feeling of happiness burst over his mental defenses. He actually felt a threat of dizziness. His voice trembled slightly. Really? Yes, Zuemo forced himself to say. At this time, Sangze showed his quality as the grandson of the clan leader. He did not lose control but suppressed his excitement. He asked respectfully, "What can my Gray clan do for teacher?" Zuemo looked with praise at Sangze. He thought inside that this boy was very adept. However, he did not give the other a discount due to his praise. 10 golden souls each year. When he opened, Zuemo doubled Pu Yao's price. It's not GE is greedy, GE has a home and people to support. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao gazed with bulging eyes. Hiss, Zhang sucked in a breath. Even though he had predicted that the price the Grey clan would pay would not be low, but 10 golden souls annually, this price still far surpassed his estimate. This matter is grave. This student needs to ask the elders of the sect. Zhang carefully answered. All right. Mo did not waste words. He pointed at Nan Yu and said, she is my follower, just find her in the future. Hearing this, Zhang hurriedly exchanged spirit imprints with Nan Yu. A simple, gray, character flew in front of Zhang. At the sides were 2 gray-green sparse shrubs. Nan Yu also took out her own spirit imprint. Her spirit imprint was the 2 characters, South Sky, formed by a curved purple vine. Noticing Nan Yu's spirit imprint, Zhang heart moved. In his investigation, Nan Yu did not have much of a background. She was born from a very small clan, their living conditions were difficult, and they were very normal. Seeing her spirit imprint, he couldn't help but be shocked. Being from an influential family, he naturally would not lack knowledge about spirit imprints. The way that the South Sky was written was completely different than what it was written like now. This kind of spirit imprint would mostly appear on those clans with long histories. He noted it down, and planned on making an investigation when he returned. He reached out with a finger and gently poked the South Sky. A purple light flew into his spirit imprint. Nan Yu did the same. After exchanging spirit imprints, the 2 sides would easily get in contact. Zhang hurriedly bid farewell. He was in a hurry to go back and report. He had a feeling that this chance was very likely to be a chance in the Grey clan's fortunes. After Zhang left, Mo taught Nan Yu for a while before he left. So he went the way of deconstruction. Qian Lu was slightly puzzled. A pretty unique style. The fire-faced person seemed to be uninterested in the wasteland beast chessboard. Looking around, he suddenly snickered and said, those little brats probably can't stop themselves now. Qian Lu knew the people the fire-faced person was referring to. He smiled but did not speak. He continued to observe the wasteland beast chessboard. He had left vast water clear skies 300 years ago when he had broken the prison. He had not paid much attention to this incident in the past. But his curiosity did not decrease today. He could not remember how long it had been since he came to vast water clear skies. As an expert that stayed in the 7th prison, the 1st prison was really a distant memory. Today, he had come especially to take a lot what the newly constructed prison by the guy who had broken his vast water clear skies looked like. I heard he is also very young. Qian Lu asked interestedly. Very young. The fire-faced person's eyes raised his eyebrows. The face inside the ball of fire raised his brows with schadenfreude. He's probably on the list of the little brats as a target to challenge. That's not bad. Qian Lu said neutrally, competition is good. He took back his consciousness and said with regret, pity I cannot activate the prison-breaking battle. The powerful stuff is all in there. The conditions to activate the prison-breaking battle were mysterious. For example, no one had activated the 1st prison, vast water clear skies, in the 300 years. However, in the last 300 years, the 2nd, 4th, and 5th prisons had all been activated. The pattern involved was hard to predict. Qian Lu had activated a prison-breaking battle and knew much more than normal people. The conditions to activate the prison-breaking battle did not have a direction connection with power, but the level of the person. It was also a very subtle connection. It would not work if the person's level was too high, like he was currently. He could activate the 1st prison's prison-breaking battle 300 years ago, but the present him could not do so. It would also not work if their level was too low. Also, the 10-finger prison seemed to favor Young Yao. More accurately, Young Yao with high levels. It really was a pity. Qian Lu shook his head regretfully. The other's most powerful Yao art imprint was inside the prison-breaking battle. The wasteland beast chessboard was filled with profound and exquisite deconstructing Yao arts. It was like a rich sea of problems. Qianlu had fought against many experts before, but it was the first time he had seen such an unique style. His heart itched and was hard to resist. The fire-faced person saw the regret on Qianlu's face and suddenly crowded over. I have a solution. What solution? Get the group of brats to come. The fire-faced person seemed to want the world in chaos. That group of brats definitely is full of motivation right now. Let them come break the wasteland beast chessboard. Qianlu's thoughts shifted, but he shook his head and said, the prison-breaking battle is not so easy to activate. That isn't our business. I speculate that the group of old farts is also interested, the fire-faced said and snickered. He then said with righteous magnanimity, don't worry about this matter, I'll get them to come. Qianlu was truly curious about Zhuo Mo's Yao arts. He smiled and did not stop the other, only saying, don't make it too big. Don't worry, don't worry. The fire-faced person's expression was excited. Zhuo Mo came out of the wasteland beast chessboard and felt a warm gust of air on his face. He shook, and hurriedly opened his eyes. A familiar face was almost pressed to his. Ague. He released a breath. Holding up Ague's face, he asked curiously, what were you doing? Ague stared dazedly at him and did not reply. When Zhuo Mo finished speaking, he stilled. Wait. Joy suddenly came into his eyes. Ague. Ague still looked dumbly at Zhuo Mo without any response. The joy on Zhuo Mo's face gradually retreated. He examined Ague closely. Her eyes were still empty and wooden. He couldn't help but have a disappointed expression. Ague had not recovered. He shook his head, and mocked himself. He was really too greedy. He quickly recovered from his disappointment. Even though Ague had not recovered, but she was much more lively now compared to before. At the very least, this was a sign of a good turn of fortunes. Thinking it through, the depression over Zhuo Mo's heart instantly swept away, and he roused himself. Jumping up, he picked Ague up and put her on his back as he charged outside. Ague, let's go. We'll go to Shu Long's place to play. Chapter 357, Shadow Mo Garda. Whenever since the guard camp was established, it seemed fated to have a hidden competitive relationship with Vermilion Bird Camp, even though the majority of the camp guards were once Vermilion Bird Camp's captives. At the start, Vermilion Bird Camp had been unparalleled in its strength, and dominated all of Little Mountain Jie. In reality, for a very long time after the camp was formed, Guard Camp had been in a very awkward state. They were weak offensively, could not fight for Darren, and in many occasions, they were a burden. Even many people from Vermilion Bird Camp could not understand why Darren would set up Guard Camp who was so weak in battle. Everyone in Guard Camp had a grudge. They furiously cultivated without holding back any energy back. They never asked why they were cultivating, why were they cultivating like this? They only buried their heads and cultivated. Hardship. They were show slaves, they were not afraid of hardship. Finally, the situation changed when Shu Long formed his armor. After forming his armor, Shu Long did not just recover his youth, but his combat abilities had become comparable to the top tier under Darren's command. The Crow Fiend Mo kill formation was finally effective in battle, but the main force in battles was still Vermilion Bird Camp. Their heavy and clumsy armor caused their movements to be slow. This made them take up a more defensive position in battles. The situation had finally changed now. Shu Long tightly grasped the long halberd in his hand. A cold feeling passed back as though a burst of strength burrowed into his body. His chest was filled with motivation. It wasn't as simple as just getting a weapon. Shu Long suddenly saw Zhuo Mo and Ague in the doorway, and hurriedly bowed. Zhuo Mo looked around. Seeing everyone working hard, a smile came onto his face. Not bad. Zhuo Mo had been worried about morale previously. Seeing the business of the campsite, his heart relaxed slightly. In reality, Guard Camp's morale had been good all along. This place was filled with black fiendish energy. It gave the guard camp the hope of surpassing Vermilion Bird Camp. They worked even harder on their cultivation. Vermilion Bird Camp's morale was more severely affected, but after Zhuo threw them, Fiend Ling, they had settled down. The path to leave this land could be slowly searched for, but if they did not even have the Ling energy to cultivate, that was a blade that hung above the necks of Shouja. Owen saw Zhuo and ran over. Darren, Darren. When Zhuo saw Owen, he asked with a smile, Owen, how's your cultivation going? Owen was much healthier than when he had been rescued. His exquisite armor did not feel clumsy at all, but nimble and light. Haha, Darren, look. Owen held up his black spear as though he was presenting a treasure. My weapon formed too. And I also comprehended some fun things. The completely black long spear had no adornment, but it gave the feeling of being finely crafted. The lines were smooth and flowing, 2 grooves on either side of the spear point. The fiery red charm hung at the head of spear and caused the black spear, which originally seemed murderous and cold, to have a hint of fire. Can the spear leave your body? Zhuo asked. No. Owen scratched his head and said, the black speak is condensed from killing energy. If it leaves my hand, it will dissipate. Zhuo's interest was stirred. Come, show me. Owen obeyed. With a somersault, he flew out 20 zhang. Seeing this, the other people in the campsite stopped what they were doing and cheered Owen on. Little monkey, one more. Little monkey, don't embarrass yourself in front of Darren. Haha, little monkey, if you can't do it, switch for someone else. When Owen had been rescued, his figure had been very small. Even though he was much healthier now, but among this camp of burly men, his figure really was on the small side. Adding on that Owen's personality was lively and active, he was also clever, everyone called him Little Monkey. Ha, just be jealous. Owen shot back. His smiling face suddenly turned serious as he stood holding his spear. The noisy camp instantly quieted. Everyone's mirth retreated, their expressions becoming serious. Owen might be young, but he was exceptionally talented, and was firmly held his spot as the second strongest member of the guard camp, his strength just a bit less than Shu Long's. They were also very curious about what Owen had comprehended from staying in meditation for so long in the fiendish mist. Shu Long had a gratified expression. He was the oldest, his personality was steady and well established. His competitive desire was weak. He had basically taught everything to Owen. Seeing Owen improve rapidly, he was very happy. Owen's expression was serious. The air flowed in streams around him and gradually sped up. In an instant, the air started to hiss like an arrow traveling at a high speed. Clang! With the sound of metallic impact, many black and gold plumes popped out of the black armor. Zhuo was very shocked. Owen's figure was thin and slender to begin with. With the addition of these long feather-like black gold plumes, he looked even more nimble. Owen bent his legs slightly and then his figure disappeared from his spot. So fast. Zhuo's pupils slightly shrunk. His eyes were not ordinary, but he could only see a streak of black. He was shocked. Unless Zhuo used the light void wings, he would be left eating dust behind Owen with that speed. This boy's talent isn't bad. Pu Yao couldn't resist popping in. Look, this is the difference. He can cultivate to this step using a trashy, hardship guard. Don't you feel ashamed? Ashamed? Why should I be ashamed? Zhuo did not turn his eyes and responded, it's better the stronger he is. Pu Yao finally recalled the person in front of him had such a thick face that he was immune to mockery of this degree. Zhuo rubbed his chin and said directly, not bad, not bad. This fast, we don't have to use turtle tactics in the future. Can he fly? It will be great if there is flight. Don't think so optimistically. Pu Yao could not bear to see Zhuo's content state, and smirked. This boy is very talented. The other people lack greatly compared to him. They can only be heavy armor hardship guards. His tone then turned. So many cultivation sects, they are all blind to dismiss such a good seed. Pu Yao started his usual habit of mocking everyone. Zuo ignored him and looked seriously at Awen. Awen's speed was extremely fast, and rivaled the sword Xiu when they flew on their swords. His nimbleness was actually better than sword Xiu. Zuo, who could be considered to be an old-timer, was very clear how much of an advantage such speed would be in combat. Midair, Awen flipped again, and the black spear in his hands suddenly thrust. Hiss! A section of the spear point suddenly appeared out of the air in a place 30 zhang from his body. What is that? Zuo Mo's expression changed. Airbreaker, a little technique. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Even though he said this, Pu Yao could not disguise the pride on his face. So young and he comprehended airbreaker. It can be considered rare for MO guards. Pu Yao's tone turned to be slightly regretful. Actually, Xu Long's talent is also not bad, but it is a pity that his age when he started cultivation is slightly old. All of the others sighed in shock. They widened their eyes in fear of missing any detail. Many of the techniques that Awen was showing now was great inspiration to him, especially the camp guards that had broken through and formed their weapon. In the air, Awen seemed unconstrained by space. The tip of his spear thrust would appear in any place within 100 zhang of him according to his will. In a good mood, Pu Yao started to urge. Actually, hardship guards like this boy's kind is rare. The greatest duty of Mo guards are to protect their master, not to kill enemies. That is why Mo guards are frequently large blockheads. These people from guard camp are too weak. The best Mo guards are mountain range bull Mo, and stone rhinoceros Mo. If they cultivate, hardship guard, TSK, they are just moving mountains. If it is the mantis Mo that cultivate, hardship guard, it is more common for shadow Mo guards specialized in speed to appear. But mantis Mo are guys who will die if they are touched. Who would use them as guards? Maybe if they do not want to live a long time. Hearing this, Zuo noticed the other people in guard camp. As expected, they were all big blockheads. Each person's body was full of exaggerated muscles. Their figures were half again as large as normal people on average. Adding on the thick armor, they were like mobile steel forts. At this time, the red charm on Awen's black spear suddenly turned to a thread of fire and wrapped around the tip of the spear. Kill! Awen shouted. A light that intermingled red and black tore apart the air. Boom! Everyone felt their vision light up. A burning and fiendish wave of air blew through the entire guard camp. When the air gust subsided, a deep pit about 5 zhang wide appeared on the corner of the campsite. It was an easy matter to make a pit 5 zhang wide. However, this pit seemed slightly deep. Zuo flew to beside the pit, and looked inside. His heart was instantly shocked. This pit most likely was not less than 20 zhang deep. Making a pit with a width of 5 zhang was not hard, but a pit that was deeper than 20 zhang was very difficult to accomplish. This pit was formed like a knife cutting tofu. The bottom and top part of the hole were the same width. This showed one thing. Awen's attacking force was concentrated and evenly distributed. Zuo judged that if he was hit, he would probably lose half of his life. Awen's figure flashed and he appeared next to Zuo. Not bad, little monkey, Zuo praised. You have really broadened my vision. Awen's face suddenly became flushed, and slightly embarrassed. Darren, do not ridicule this humble performance. Ho, little monkey, you're embarrassed now. Haha, little monkey's face is very thin. The people in the surroundings instantly started. Awen was even more embarrassed. He scratched his head and stood at the side. Seeing this, the other people laughed even more happily. Zuo also couldn't resist roaring in laughter. Is what you say true? The elders in the room exploded. Many of the elders unconsciously stood up. These elders' emotions were turbulent, and they forgot to keep their strength back. All the furniture in the room creaked and exploded in pieces. Sang Zhe's scalp turned numb. He did not dare to breath. He said so. How can he know how to cultivate gray scar art? He definitely is a liar. Who cares if he is a liar? Catch him and then we will know. Catch? What if he really knows? If we offend him, we will really lose greatly. The Grey Clan elders talked over each other, their faces red and their necks thick as though they were going to kill someone. Sangze buried his head lower, and grimaced inside. All right, all of you shut up. A deep voice sounded. All of the voices disappeared. The chief elder finally spoke. Sangze wiped away the cold sweat and celebrated inside. What conditions does he have? The chief elder opened his eyes in his wrinkle-filled face. 10 golden souls. Each year. The enormous elder room was deathly silent. Chapter 358, Public Challenge. Have you gone to see the Wasteland Beast chessboard? A student excitedly asked his classmate. Another student hurriedly took up the topic. Of course, how can I miss it? They are really strong. They say it is a very young Yao. I wonder which Yao art house this monster came from. There are Yao beyond Yao, bro. Student A said emotionally. Right? I had assumed before that all the geniuses were part of the Genius Alliance. Didn't think there would be people outside. Student B felt it was slightly impossible to believe. Ha, I've long found that group of lily-white faces an eyesore. They take away all the girls based on their strength, and leave us with nothing. A hero finally comes down from the heavens. Hero. He definitely has to strike a blow against their arrogant aura and save all of us. Student A spread out his arms and shouted. At the side, a snort suddenly came. Delusional. Student A was enraged and suddenly turned around his face. However, he instantly faltered when he saw who had come. He dejectedly pulled Student B and fled. Mu Wushang disdainfully stared at the two fleeing figures, but a shadow came over his mood. His steps grew slightly faster. He quickly reached the lecture room. When he stepped into the room, a wave of noise blew into his face. He unconsciously frowned. The terms of prison-breaking battle and Wasteland Beast chessboard continuously appeared. His mood became even more terrible. He noticed that when some students saw him, they purposefully increased their volume and made expressions in secret. Mu Wushang unconsciously clenched his fists. He snorted coldly, turned and walked out of the lecture room. Che, what Genius Alliance, that is a true genius, yes, yes, the sounds of discussion behind him burrowed into his ears. His face was blackened. In a depressed mood, Mu Wushang flew to Daytime Peak. Right now, it was class time and there were not many people on Daytime Peak. Standing on the 6,000 Chi Daytime Peak, he looked into the distance. Mu Wushang's depressed mood instantly eased greatly. Ha, I guess you were here. A familiar voice came from behind him. Without needing to turn his head, Wu Wushang knew who had come. Jin Ling, his best friend from childhood. The two were from large clans, and had close relations. The two of them had played together from very young and could be considered childhood sweethearts. However, the two of them had developed a platonic friendship, and were like siblings rather than the more intimate relationship their parents wanted. Why concern yourself with these people? Jin Ling urged, it seems that we suppress them too much usually. Mu Wushang did not speak, but his heart eased. There were two members of Genius Alliance in Bright Might Yao Art House, one was Mu Wushang, the other was Jin Ling. Genius Alliance was a loose organization among students. It was established 400 years ago and was created by the 12 top genius students from the many Yao art houses of the Yao world. The Genius Alliance only recruited those with outstanding students. After developing for more than 4 centuries, the influence of Genius Alliance was much greater than it started with. In 4 centuries, each generation's alliance leader of the Genius Alliance was the undoubted leader of their generation of students. When these geniuses finished their schooling, if they would enter the important systems of the Yao world or they were managing major areas. In its 4-century history, 9 Sky Yao had appeared among their numbers. This was almost 7/10 of the Sky Yao that had appeared over this 4-century period. Each student thought it an honor to enter the Genius Alliance, and the scheduled exchanges inside the alliance was fatally attractive to these people who were cultivating maniacs. If they could enter the Genius Alliance, they would definitely have a bright future. However, these great talents also garnered much ire. On one hand, due to thinking highly of themselves, they were very brazen in their actions, and naturally did not attract favor. On the other hand, the elders that had already left the Genius Alliance liked to take care of their younger juniors in the Genius Alliance. This meant that the Genius Alliance was given a great amount of resources, and caused many Yao to feel it was unfair. The reason that this prison-breaking battle was related to the Genius Alliance was that the Genius Alliance had been planning on a prison-breaking battle recently. They were used to being high-profile, and so this plan had been made public early on so everyone knew. But at this time, the sudden prison-breaking battle that appeared caused the Genius Alliance's position to be very awkward. Those students that disliked the Genius Alliance before were naturally happy. The Genius Alliance that had never been in a reactive position before finally tasted what it was like to be roasted on a fire. However, these young geniuses were all very proud. How could they swallow this? Mu Wushang was also the same. Jin Ling's tone was light, but she also had a fire suppressed inside. Suddenly, the spirit imprint on Mu Wushang's arm lit up. Mu Wushang noticed the ancient character inside the light, and a blush came onto his black face. His eyes became excited. A ball of light floated from the spirit imprint and a face that they were very familiar with showed up. He said excitedly, "Great, both of you are here. Saves me from making another trip. Quick, come to the Wasteland Beast chessboard now." Mu Wushang and Jing Ling exchanged looks. They were excited. The alliance was going to act. The two did not waste words and instantly stood to fly with their greatest speed to the cultivation seclusion rooms. The two each rented a seclusion room, and entered the Wasteland Beast chessboard. They quickly found the alliance. 46 Yao. Mu Wushang and Jin Ling were all greatly shocked, and then they immediately became excited. It was possible to see how much the alliance prioritized this matter when so many alliance members were present. When they saw the youth that looked very honest at the front, they couldn't help but become excited again. He had a very interesting name, Why Boy. He was one of the supervisors of the Genius Alliance. Those that had roles inside the Genius Alliance were those that were very powerful, more powerful than normal members. Why Boy's appearance was very normal. He always had a smile on his face, appeared to be harmless and honest. But today, the smile on Why Boy's smile disappeared. The narrowed eyes were lit up. Just received news that the master of the Wasteland Beast chessboard has challenged us directly. Mu Wushang's excited expression froze on his face. He looked dazedly at Why Boy, his mouth gaping. The other student members all had shocked and disbelieving faces. Challenging the Genius Alliance. Was this guy crazy? This has already been broadcasted by all the major Yao channels. We do not know if someone is scheming and pushing their agenda from the shadows, or if it is the person's challenge. But this is not important. Because we will use reality to tell everyone that doubts us. Who is truly the geniuses? Like usual, Nanyu entered the Wasteland Beast chessboard. However, today seemed. She looked strangely at the surrounding Yao. She noticed that they all seemed to be very excited. Has something major happened? Did someone activate the prison-breaking battle again? She shook her head and smiled, and felt amused that she would have such an absurd thought. I heard that the Genius Alliance are coming to break the Wasteland Beast chessboard. This sentence burrowed into Nanyu's ears. Nanyu shook and felt a basin of cold water had been poured over her head. What? Genius Alliance wanted to break Darren's Wasteland Beast chessboard. She focused and listened closely. Ah. Why is Genius Alliance at odds with the Wasteland Beast chessboard? I remember now. They seem to have said they were going to break a prison before. Had their goal also been vast water clear skies? Ha, you definitely do not know. The one making the challenge is the mystery person. Mystery person? The owner of the Wasteland Beast chessboard? Just that one. Go watch the news, they're broadcasting it everywhere. Nanyu wasn't in the mood to cultivate and immediately left the Wasteland Beast chessboard. Her room was just 4 walls, where would she have the Yao Nu's tree? She hurriedly put on an outer garment, pushed open the door and flew up. She recalled that the center of the city had an enormous Yao Nu's tree. She saw the Yao Nu's tree that reached up to the clouds from a long way off, and adjusted her direction to fly towards it. This Yao Nu's tree was the largest of the 3 closest cities. The enormous crown of the tree was like a small mountain with innumerable forts. Countless vines drooped down from the tree branches and were heavy with pod-like fruits. Yao filled all of the Yao Nu's tree. Nanyu picked a place with few people and landed. When she just steadied her body, her consciousness wrapped on a thin vine in front of her. With a pop, the fruit of the Yao Nu's tree exploded and turned to a multicolored mist. The rainbow mist quickly changed and became a beautiful female Yao. The female Yao's expression was very excited, and spoke very quickly. The mystery young expert that just finished the prison-breaking battle and reconstructed the Wasteland Beast chessboard has publicly challenged the Genius Alliance. We are now doing a special report about this matter. Up until now, the Genius Alliance has not made any formal statements about this matter, and the new master of the Wasteland Beast chessboard has not been seen. However, this matter is definitely not unsubstantiated. Maybe we will soon see a spectacular struggle. Nanyu's head rang. Impossible. This was impossible. Darren definitely would not challenge the Genius Alliance. This thought was so strong that Nanyu did not doubt it. She had not spent much time with Darren, but she did not feel that Darren, from any perspective, would be such an arrogant and impulsive Yao. There definitely was someone spreading fake information. Nanyu was not dumb and instantly understood. However, her expression did not turn for the better but became even worse. No one was ignorant of the power of the Genius Alliance. Almost all Yao knew what those geniuses were like. Regardless of whether this information was real, with the conduct of the Genius Alliance, they definitely would not rest. Why was it like this? Shixiang, move faster, Gong Sun Cha said, unsatisfied. In the fiendish mist, Zhuo Mo's face instantly fell. After absorbing the soul base source of the fiend's souls, Gong Sun Cha's speed had increased, which caused Zhuo Mo's fishing to be unable to keep up. Zhuo Mo was discontent. So noisy. It's good that you even have something to eat. 10th grade flew up and down at the side, his little face slightly distressed. No, Shixiang, you have to be responsible for satiation since you are responsible for the food. Gong Sun Cha's face was rascally. The corner of Zhuo Mo's eyes twitched. He forcibly suppressed the impulse to kick Gong Sun Cha away. Suddenly, his gaze focused and he stopped all movement. Raising his face, he looked towards the deeper parts of the fiendish mist. Sword Essence. Chapter 359, Activation Sword Essence. There was sword essence within the fiendish mist. Zhuo Mo's eyes flashed. The sword essence coming from the fiendish mist was faint, but he was sure it wasn't an illusion. Out of caution, he closed his eyes and spread out his consciousness. A moment later, he opened his eyes. They were ecstatic. There were people. There were people inside the fiendish mist. Nothing could excite him more. He hadn't been this excited even after he completed the prison break battle. Ever since they stepped into this vast, desolate, and mysterious ancient battlefield, uncertainty and worry had always been clouds over his heart regardless of how calm and composed he appeared. There was no sign of life to be seen on this unknown ancient battlefield. This place was silent and barren, filled with danger. All the signs supported that this was a land of death. The scariest part of a dead land was the dangers all around it. The impoverished and dangerous environment meant that Zhuo Mo and the others did not even have a chance to breathe. But now, Zhuo Mo suddenly found that there were people existing in a place he assumed was dead. How could he not be ecstatic? It was like searching endlessly in the darkness, and suddenly seeing a glimmer of light. At least, they had a chance to rest. Suemo believed that if they had enough time, they could definitely walk out of the ancient battlefield. There are people ahead. Suemo pointed excitedly at the depth of the fiendish mist as he said to Gongsun Cha. People? Gongsun Cha was stunned. After a moment, he suddenly reacted. There are people inside. Suemo nodded heavily. Someone is using sword essence in there. In that direction. It's a bit far from us, but not impossibly so. I can feel it, but it is not very strong. What should we do? Gongsun Cha hurriedly asked. Gather everyone, and we will advance in that direction. We need to be fast, or we will miss them. At this time, Suemo showed the decisiveness of a leader and did not hesitate in issuing instructions. Wei Xing stared at the fiend's soul beast in front of him, the black sword in his hand slightly raised. However, his heart sank slightly. The body of this fiend's soul beast was longer than 3 zhang. It was shaped like a scorpion. Between the 2 pincers, he was able to see the crisscrossing teeth that sent chills through his heart. Its body was completely covered in shiny, black armor covered with red seal scripts that curved like earthworms. There were 2 dark red dots for eyes that lit up in the fiendish mist, and shocked one's soul. Its body was close to the ground, the 2 pincers slightly raised as a dark and vicious presence tightly locked onto Wei Xing. This fiend's soul beast had silently closed in with intentions of ambushing him. If it wasn't for the fact that Wei Xing cultivation level had progressed greatly, his sword essence spiritually clear and taken to heart, Wei Xing himself was not sure he could survive after an ambush by such a vicious beast. However, Wei Xing did not panic due to his shock. He was not willing to show weakness, and his sword essence locked onto the other. This fiend's soul scorpion seemed to know the prey in front of it should not be underestimated. It did not dare to move rashly, and it seemed very wary of the great black sword in Wei Xing's hands. The 2 descended into a standoff. Wei Xing closely watched the fiend's soul scorpion, the black sword in his hand did not tremble at all. He had killed his every step the entire way on his trip through the fiendish mist. After continuous, hard battles, his body was very tired and at the end of its strength. The black sword seemed to lose its spirit. The aura had gradually faded. This caused Wei Xing to feel it progressing was even harder, and basically had left him no opportunity to rest. The exhaustion of his body was like a tide, wave after wave crashing against Wei Xing's mental defenses. Suddenly, Wei Xing recalled the time when he had been a sword servant. Just with his simple and crude sword art, he had been searching for his sword path in the wilderness. At that time, he had been so innocent and so satisfied. There were no conflicts inside the sect, no unspoken criticism about the sect, no other thoughts. He was like the sword in his hand, simple to the utmost. He lightly sighed. There were many matters in the world that people were helpless against, could not brush off or dodge. Like this patch of fiendish mist. It continuously corroded his Ling power. Now he understood why so many Xiuzhou would stay in a distant place away from the troubles of the world. As Wei Xing's mind was distracted, the cunning and vicious fiend soul scorpion instantly seized at a chance. The glowing red eyes drew out 2 soul-shaking streaks in the fiendish mist. The speed of the fiend soul scorpion was like lightning. It was so fast, and the sound was so muffled that there wasn't even a vibration in the air. Wei Xing's heart was shocked. He knew he was in an unprecedentedly dangerous situation. When he had sighed just now, he instantly knew that the wandering thought was a sign of extreme danger. It meant that his body was weak to the point of collapsing, which was why his mental defenses had been so lax. But he had not expected this vicious beast to be so sensitive and cunning to accurately seize this chance. His wrist flipped, and the horse-chopping saber that was up to Wei Xing's chest seemed to be as light as air as it blocked in front of his chest. Dong! Among the sound of steel striking, Wei Xing's body shook and he retreated 7 steps. Wei Xing grimaced inside. If his condition wasn't so poor, then he wouldn't have retreated even one step under such a force. But his endurance and Ling power had reached their tail ends. His battle experience was rich and he knew that the vicious beast in front of him was cunning and deceitful. It definitely had detected that he was weak inside. As expected, the red light of the fiend's soul scorpion exploded. It did not attack but like before, it dashed forward. Such a cautious beast. Wei Xing did not have the time to finish praising it when a great force passed over. He made a muffled grunt, and took 10 steps back before he steadied his figure. Was he going to be buried here today? Wei Xing sighed inside. Only now did the fiend's soul scorpion truly confirm that Wei Xing had reached his last legs. It attacked without hesitation. It was very cunning, and knew that Wei Xing had almost no strength left, so it tried to use brute force to destroy Wei Xing. Dong dong dong. The sound of impacts were endless like a tempest. Wei Xing struggled to endure like a little boat in a hurricane, suddenly moving up and down as though he could be swallowed by the waves at any moment. The attacks of the fiend's soul scorpion were relentless and as fast as lightning. Wei Xing was surrounded by danger. The already tattered clothing at this time was destroyed by the small yet sharp turbulence like butterflies in flight. A stream of blood came from the corner of Wei Xing's mouth. The Ling power in his body was drained, his channels started to crack. He would not be able to persist for much longer, as his channels would shatter into countless pieces, and his cultivation would instantly collapse. The black sword that had seemed vicious before was like a dull sword of ordinary metal without any sheen. Was he really going to lose his life here? Wei Xing was in a daze, his moves slow as though he could fall at any moment. Yet unexpectedly, after more than 10 continuous attacks, he was still standing, barely. If one looked closely, they would find that when the fiend's soul scorpion's pair of pincers was going to strike him, the black sword in his hand would coincidentally appear in front of the giant pincers. The moment his body was in danger, Wei Xing would always make an instinctive response. Without conscious thought, without Ling power, his mind was completely blank. Dong dong dong. The hurricane was ongoing, so long it made one feel hopeless. Yet the scene was filled with weirdness. Wei Xing's eyes were wooden, empty, and without thought, his movements were slow. Yet the instant the giant pincers were going to touch his body, his hesitation would disappear. His movements would be unspeakably simple and crisp, but when paired with his wooden expression, it was even stranger. It was as though if one more straw was added to his load, Wei Xing would fall. But no matter how the fiend's soul scorpion tried, even when the giant pincers tore the air apart in their attacks, they were stopped by Wei Xing, movements that were filled with strangeness. Nan Yu stood on the borderless wasteland beast chessboard. She bit her lips tightly. Just on her way here, she had already seen 7 groups of people from the Genius Alliance. The Genius Alliance did not have any intentions of disguising its retaliation. Dozens of the Genius Alliance supervisors continued to announce that they would definitely break the Wasteland Beast chessboard. The Genius Alliance were usually high-profile, but declaring such a thing in public had never happened before. Anyone with eyes could see the master of the Wasteland Beast chessboard had infuriated the Genius Alliance. A guy that offended the Genius Alliance, what good outcome would he have? How could Nan Yu, who had been hearing of the Genius Alliance since she was very young, not know this? Before, the Genius Alliance was a place that was high and out of reach. She did not dare to even think of having a connection with the Genius Alliance, much less entering it. But in a night, the Genius Alliance actually became her enemy. How could she not feel terror? She knew they were targeting Darren, but as Darren's follower, Darren's enemies were her enemies. She felt great pressure from the groups of Genius Alliance members that appeared on the Wasteland Beast chessboard. Nan Yu did not know how many Ya were paying attention to the Wasteland Beast chessboard, but she could clearly feel that there were multiple times more Ya at the Wasteland Beast chessboard than there were normally. Hey, has there been a result? No. Supposedly, the Genius Alliance of Fixed Sky Jia have come. This is going to be something good to see. Fixed Sky Jia also came. Then isn't it already 6 Jia that have come? It's the 8th Jia. Central Pawn Jia and Lilium Jia also came. Wow, this scary. Yes, none of the Genius Alliance is willing to be defeated. How can they rest? In my view, even if this matter concluded here, this conflict won't end. In your view, who do you favor? It's hard to say. On the surface, the Genius Alliance of course has the advantage, but a person that set down the Wasteland Beast chessboard, can he be a nice guy? Only idiots would believe such a thing. Look at how many people came from the Genius Alliance, but no one has activated the prison-breaking battle. Hearing the discussion drifting into her ears, Nanyu felt unspeakably irritated and fretful. Which damned guys dared to slander Darren? They should be slowly sliced to death. At this time, a wave of sounds suddenly came over. Prison-breaking battle. Someone activated the prison-breaking battle. The sound wave came from far and rolled over. Nanyu's head rang and blanked. Her face was pale as she was stunned where she stood. The Yao and the surroundings hated that they were born without 2 more legs as they furiously charged towards the prison battlefield. Countless Yao of different shapes formed a flood towards the prison battlefield. Nanyu was sandwiched in the middle and uncontrollably followed the flood towards the prison battlefield. How was it possible? How was the Genius Alliance really this powerful? Her expression was filled with hopelessness. Chapter 360, Start. I didn't think that someone would activate the prison-breaking battle so quickly. It is slightly unexpected to me, Qian Lu said with a smile. The fire-faced person twisted his mouth. You're the only one interested in this low-level stuff. However, he had a proud expression, my skill isn't bad. Utmost base. Qian Lu did not hesitate in giving his opinion. But very effective. The pride on the fire-faced person did not decrease in the slightest. Qian Lu was too lazy to speak and stared at the prison battlefield. Huai vigilantly paid attention to his surroundings. The supervisors of the Genius Alliance were set for each Jia had 1 supervisor. This year, Huai was 20, and his strength and talent was undisputed to be able to become a supervisor of the Genius Alliance. However, Huai had not thought that he would activate the prison-breaking battle. Of the 8 supervisors that had entered the Wasteland Beast chessboard, in terms of power, he was ranked in the middle. However, he quickly reacted, and was very excited. This was a chance from the heavens. There were not many rules in the Genius Alliance, but being rewarded for one's service was the one upheld the strictest. There had been 9 Sky Yao to come out of the Genius Alliance, and 5 of them had left Yao arts behind for the Genius Alliance. This was added on to the wondrous techniques and strange arts that the generations of Alliance leaders had collected, which were all stored in a Yao art tree in the center of the Yao realm. This tree surpassed any Yao art tree from any Yao art house. This was a place that all Yao dreamed of. Huai was not an exception. Huai came from Yingwen Scholar clan. It was one of the major clans locally, but in all of the Yao realm, it could only be considered middling. The Blue Thorn secret art was a very good Yao art, but Huai did not feel satisfied. He had become a supervisor of the Genius Alliance at such a young age and had great ambitions. No one, in the Scholar clan's history, had become a Sky Yao by cultivating Blue Thorn secret art. How could he be satisfied? The clan did not withhold any resources when nurturing him, and used all kinds of methods to collect even more powerful Yao arts for him. However, each of the top Yao arts were peerless in value. After so many years, they still were unable to acquire a top Yao art. Prison-breaking battle, no matter what, he had to achieve victory. Huai made a resolution. This service would probably be able to be traded for a pretty good Yao art. Come. Huai's eyes lit up, and he was full of fighting spirit. The procession of boats silently and rapidly progressed in the fiendish mist. Of the 5 slave-transporting boats, the slave-transporting boat of Golden Crow Camp was at the very center. The formation scripts on the body of the boat released faint light. The Crimson Fiend Cauldron continuously transformed the fiendish mist into Ling power, and guided it into the formations carved on the boat. Compared to when it was made, the Crimson Fiend Cauldron was much smaller now. This was due to being used day and night without a moment of rest. The Ling power transformed by the Crimson Fiend Cauldron, a 5th-grade talisman, was not just vast and rich, it was of high quality. As it worked day and night, this rich and pure Ling power was a small fire that finely baked the cauldron and continuously processed it. The Crimson Fiend Cauldron was created by everyone of Golden Crow Camp, and it was unprecedented in its invention. However, many parts of the Crimson Fiend Cauldron could not help but be somewhat heterogeneous due to the differences in cultivation of Sun Bao, Ji Wei, and the others. After a long period of Ling power forging, the impurities of the Crimson Fiend Cauldron were slowly processed, and its quality was higher than before, but its size shrunk greatly. Zhuemo was standing at the bow of the slave-transporting boat at the very front. His gaze was fixed into the mist. The formations of the boat reflected light on his tense face, and flickered. Beside him, Ague propped up her chin and copied Zhuemo to look into the distance. Ague's wounds were clearly recovering, and her face gradually had some expression, even though it was still very wooden. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. There were hardship guards in black armor that ran around constantly on their patrol. Their expressions were watchful, and they were all hardship guards that had created their weapons. Owen ran at the very front with the black spear in his hand. The bright red tassel was like a flame flickering in the wind. These guard camp elite that had finished forming their weapons were like fish in the water among the fiendish mist. They also became the primary combat force. Gong Sun Cha led the Vermilion Bird camp, Shu Long led the guard camp, Xia Shan was on the last slave-transporting boat as the rear guard. In the remaining slave-transporting boat, Ma Fan sat on top of the boat. The other people of the Sky Peak platoon were scattered around the boat. After the epiphany last time, Ma Fan's sword essence had reached manifestation, and the suppression the fiendish mist had on him was minimized. Everyone seemed to be on their guard, their expressions heavy. A murderous presence was thick and roiling among the troop like an enormous beast slowly traveling close to the ground without hurry or slowness. Even though he was in a hurry to find the person inside the fiendish mist, but Zhuemo knew very well how dangerous the depths of the fiendish mist were. He did not dare to move without forethought. In such a dangerous territory, the slightest bit of carelessness could cause all of them to die. Lil, Pagoda and Lil, Fire nervously burrowed into Ague's arms. Lil, Black had a death grip on Ague's hair. Silly Bird's expression was unconcerned. The tense situation did not invoke any response from her. 10th grade floated on the black antennae of the twin butterfly, the murderous and cold little face showing yearning. It was strange to speak of it. A ball of faint white mist still hung at the end of the white antennae of the twin butterfly and showed no signs of becoming tangible. 10th grade was born from the twin butterfly absorbing black fiendish energy. Rather than being afraid of the fiendish mist, he felt it was very intimate. However, his sense of danger was more sensitive than normal shouja. The deeps of the fiendish mist gave him a strong feeling of danger, so much that he did not dare to go deep in. He was proud, but he was not stupid. After fishing with Zhuemo and Gong Sun Cha these past days, 10th grade had an even clearer understanding of the fiendish mist's dangers. Of course, most important was that the unreasonable and vicious bird was at the side. 10th grade glanced out of the corner of his eye at Silly Bird whose eyes were closed in rest, and instinctively shrunk his neck. There are people in such a damned place. Lei Peng rumbled, and could not understand. Maybe it is the lost descendants of ancient cultivators. Nian Lu brushed his bangs and fully expressed his imagination. Ancient cultivator descendants, the people in the surroundings groaned. This guy had read too many legends and rumors. Lei Peng's gaze landed on the hardship guards that were moving nimbly and was filled with admiration. This poor place really has a finger on our weak spot. But the guard camp, they are having a really good time. Evenin wants to go cultivate, hardship guard. They were cultivating, Fiend Ling, but due to the short time cultivating it, they could just manage to defend against the corrosion of the fiendish mist. The fiendish mist that was filled with danger towards them wasn't just harmless against guard camp, but was beneficial. How could these people that were long used to leading the charge not be jealous? Don't be jealous of them. Nian Lu adjusted his clothing and said, "You can copy the captain. When your sword essence reaches the level of manifestation, you cannot be corroded by anything. The measly fiendish mist is naturally not an exception." Lei Peng was speechless. There seemed to be an invisible wall around Ma Fan's body. The red-black fiendish mist could not enter the area around him. Everyone did not feel any Ling power rippling, which meant that Captain had not used Ling power. This area had naturally formed after Ma Fan achieved sword essence manifestation. However, compared to starting from the beginning and cultivating hardship guard, the difficulty of reaching sword essence manifestation was even higher. Unless they cultivated to Jin Dan, it wasn't just any normal monster that could reach sword essence manifestation in Ningmai. But even from Ningmai to Jin Dan, the difficulty involved. Blast it! Lei Peng shot out an angry breath. While everyone felt somewhat suppressed at not being able to charge at the very front, but they also felt slight anticipation. If there really were Xiuzhe inside the fiendish mist, then that meant they also could use their full power within the fiendish mist. They had persisted in practicing Fiend Ling, but they needed to reach the third level before they could directly transform the fiend mist into Ling power. Before that, while they still could absorb fiendish mist and transform it to Ling power, the rate was very slow. That was fine for cultivation, but during battle, that meant that their Ling power would basically be unreplenished. Many of them put their hopes on the Xiuzhe inside the fiendish mist. Ping! A crisp collision sound occurred on the outside. Everyone's expressions changed. Enemy attack. This was the first attack they had encountered up until now. No one had good expressions. They had just traveled 50 li into the fiendish mist, and started to encounter attacks from unknown and vicious beings. The dangers up ahead could be imagined. The one that encountered the enemy was a Wen. A Wen's eyes tracked the unknown and vicious beast in front of him. This vicious being was shaped like a tiger or panther, the long and nimble figure filled with beauty. Its entire body was covered in thick metal hard scales and layers and gleamed with a cold light. The paws on the ground had hooked and sharp claws that effortlessly dug into the soil. The eyes were set deep, the cheekbones protruded, but there were no eyeballs in the sockets, only red light. When a Wen's gaze came into contact with the red light inside the eyes of the vicious being, he felt his body tighten, and was shocked inside. Zhuo Mo's gaze landed on the vicious beast. Thinking about what Pu Yao had said to him before, he asked, "This is a fiend's soul beast?" "Yes." Pu Yao's tone did not have the aloofness it usually did and was filled with gravity. "Such a powerful fiend's soul beast. This fiendish mist has been through an unknown amount of time. I've never seen black fiendish mist of such intensity, and have never heard of it. This fiendish soul beast surpasses any fiend's soul beast of my knowledge. You need to be careful." Zhuo Mo was shocked. This grave tone could be said to be very rare for Pu Yao. A strong feeling of danger formed, but Zhuo Mo forcibly suppressed it. He decided to see just how powerful this fiendish soul beast really was. A Wen was a lucky survivor of the dueling stadium and had experienced many cruel battles. The fiend's soul beast in front of him gave him enormous pressure but did not cause him to lose his calm. A cold feeling came from the black spear. He suddenly had a burst of confidence. In the dueling stadium, he had defeated many opponents stronger than him, and now, he was stronger than before. The expression on the handsome face silently changed. Killing essence rose, his eyes vicious, a thick black mist came from the thenar space where he grasped his black spear, and like a black snake, it coiled around the black spear. His presence suddenly exploded, his vicious eyes glaring as he shouted lowly, "Kill!" The black spear in his hand was held flat and thrust forward without finesse. Chapter 361, The Childhood Wish. Yizhen cut a sari figure. His blue monk robe was in tatters as he staggered forward, lacking any of the usual grace that the sect taught him. However, who would care about grace at this time? He had never ever thought that the most normal sect mission would take him to such a ghastly place. Many times, he had thought that he had come to the Avicii hell that only appeared on the records. Fortunately, he had worked hard on his cultivation these years, and with eldest Shixiang's focused teaching, while his combat abilities were not strong, his body of steel tendons and metal bones was unrivaled. By relying on his great defensive abilities, he had managed to survive in this endless mist until now. Before, he had not understood why eldest Shixiang made him cultivate wisdom dhyana body, but now he felt the wonders of this dhyana technique. A circle of Buddhist script whirled around his body without rest. This was why the corrosive fiendish mist did not infect his body. Impervious to all evils, impervious to all evils, Yizhen continuously chanted. Beads of sweat could be clearly seen on his shiny and clean head. He had entered this mist for just 3 days, but in these 3 days, his heart jumped around, and he was very afraid. He was a dhyana shio, and most sensitive to corrupt, mean and fiendish beings. But this fiendish mist in front of him was endless, and it was so dense it was almost unimaginable. Other than hell, Yizhen really could not think of a place that would have such vicious fiends. Fortunately, his wisdom dhyana body could naturally subdue these corrupt beings. Even though he had struggled on his way, but he was not wounded. However, his heart did not dare relax. Even the records of the sect had never mentioned such a vicious place. The vicious beings it formed would definitely be terrifying. Exterminate evil? Don't joke. Yi Zheng was very clearly how much he was worth. He believed it was a miracle that he had not been wounded up until now. Right now, he could only hope that the news of his disappearance would quickly arrive to the sect, and the sect would send people to rescue him. Actually, at the bottom of his heart, he also knew that chances were very small. He was only a person at the borders of the sect. He did know how long it would take for the sect to respond after his disappearance. He thought about eldest Shixiang, thought about how eldest Shixiang would be further neglected now that he was not in the sect. His mood instantly became slightly low. He aimlessly traveled through the fiendish mist. After walking for a short while, sounds of fierce combat could be heard from up ahead. Yi Zheng was startled awake. After pausing, he was overjoyed, and ran with bare feet towards the sound. The sound of battle became clearer. He quickly saw a man fighting fiercely with a fiend soul scorpion. He carefully walked closer. When he saw the scorpion closely, he couldn't help but inhale sharply. More than 3 zhang tall and 2 pincers, each the size of a door. Yi Zheng felt his scalp become numb. If he was grazed by those enormous pincers, even his wisdom dhyana body definitely would be unable to tolerate it. My dear Buddha. Yi Zheng swallowed with difficulty. His gaze seemed to be glued and unable to be moved away. It was not due to the great strength of the scorpion, but how strange the scene was. The scorpion's opponent was a sword shio. Even though the black sword looked more like a horse-chopping saber, but Yi Zheng recognized that the other was a sword shio at first glance, and a very traditional sword shio. Such a strong sword shio. Yi Zheng was greatly alarmed. He recognized the origins of this scorpion. Fiend's soul beast, this was a fiend's soul beast, a vicious being born from the fiendish mist. He had previously been worried that the corrupt grounds would produce something extraordinary, but upon seeing this fiend's soul scorpion, he finally realized just how powerful these vicious beings created were. If Yi Zheng's mind was clear now, his face would be pale and alarmed, but at this moment, his gaze was completely attracted by this odd-looking battle. The expression of the sword shio was dull, as though he was ill, his movements were slow and his gaze wooden. Every time the enormous pincers of the fiend's soul scorpion were about to tear the sword shio in half, his slow movements would suddenly become nimble, and stop the giant pincer by a hair. The confused expression on the sword shio's face, the dull and slow responses, and the sudden nimbleness formed a strong contrast and was very weird. After watching for a few moments, Yi Zheng felt his Ling power roil and showed signs of losing control. He paled greatly. In terms of the peacefulness of Ling power, Dhyana Shio were blessed by the heavens. His Ling power was going wild just because he was watching someone else fight. Yi Zheng started his core scripture before he dared to look back at the battle. The signs of his Ling power escaping his control instantly disappeared. Yi Zheng exhaled. His eyes returned to the person and scorpion that were fighting. The amazement on his face increased. He looked at the sword Xiao as though he was looking at a ghost. Before, he had thought that the sword Xiao was in danger, and would be killed at any time. Now that he saw it clearly, he found to his shock that there seemed to be an invisible stickiness to the sword Xiao's black sword. The vicious fiend soul scorpion was like a puppet manipulated by many strings and was struggling in this invisible force. A terrifying sword essence. Yi Zheng could not detect the sword Xiao's sword essence at all. At this moment, he admired this sword Xiao's strength greatly. It wasn't that he had not encountered sword Xiao before, but it was the first time he had seen one so powerful. Also, the other seemed close in age to him. So young and possessing such power, it definitely was an accomplished disciple of a large sword-cultivating sect. Was he a disciple of Kunlun? Once he saw the state of the situation clearly, Yi Zheng was not in a hurry anymore, and thought about how he would exchange greetings with the person later. He was slightly stuck. This was his first time off the mountain, and he had no experience to speak of. However, being able to encounter a Xiuzha in such a dangerous place, Yi Zheng felt his luck was already pretty good. After a while, the battle still had not finished. Now Yi Zheng saw that something was wrong. The sword Xiao's expression was confused and showed no signs of waking up. Was he? Yi Zheng was daring but paid attention to details. His mind moved. After waiting another moment and seeing the situation did not turn for the better, he thought for an instant and then started to chant in a low voice. Countless scenes flashed across Wei Xing's eyes. They were mirages and shadows, but they were also so clear. The resolution he made as a child, the pursuit of it without fear through dangers, through hardships, sustaining wounds, comprehending the sword at the waterfall, becoming the eldest disciple, drinking alcohol with Swashiti under the stars, the order from the sect. Countless scenes merged together and suddenly formed an enormous net that swept over him. There was no place to escape or dodge. The net grew tighter and restrained him. He felt he could not breathe. The feeling of suffocation filled his entire body. He was like a fish in the net. The more he struggled, the tighter the net was. Why? Why was it like this? I only wanted to cultivate the sword. A burst of anger suddenly came from deep in his heart. He was like a beast trapped in a net that struggled fruitlessly. Why? It was like a silent shout, a furious bellow. Why? He shouted at the top of his lungs, he wailed sorrowfully. In a daze, he dreamed of a patch of stars. In the dark night, the stars in the sky were numerous. A light wind brushed across an empty wilderness. The faint blue sparrow-tailed grasses swayed in the wind. A child about 7 or 8 years old was sleeping amongst the grass. Raising his head to look at the light streaking across the sky, the tender child voice carried deep amazement. So beautiful. The child jumped up from the grass. The wind brushed across his face and revealed his glittering eyes. A seed was silently planted in the heart of the child. The dream was so real, as though he could touch it, but distant like how the moon reflected in the water's surface. At this moment, Wei Xing was like a statue. He looked dazedly at the child. Suddenly, something seemed to burst in his heart, and something came forth. The distance and unfamiliar childhood memory suddenly floated into his mind. Some reasons he had forgotten, those simple thoughts, they were like the blue sparrow-tailed grass seeds bursting from their shells, germination, and then growing. Yes, my dream is to cultivate the sword. A pure dream, a pure pursuit, a wish that a child made under the stars. A strange relaxation came into his mind. The feeling of suffocation disappeared without a trace. Wei Xing looked entranced at the child underneath the stars. A slightly smile came onto his face, and warmth was shoved into his chest. Yes, it all came from this affection. The complex and common mortal matters that made him feel helpless seemed so small, so insignificant. He opened his eyes, his gaze was clear without any impurity. Ling power suddenly flooded from his dry channels like water sprouting from a spring. When this new Ling power passed, the parts of his channels that had been wounded instantly became filled with life like a tree welcoming spring. The Ling power that followed out was endless. In a short period of time, his Ling power had reached his best state. However, the Ling power showed no signs of stopping. They continued to rush into Wei Xing's channels, and filled every bit of the channels. When all of Wei Xing's channels were filled with Ling power, the new Ling power started to progress towards his dantian. Wei Xing did not stop it. He did not do a thing. But that pair of eyes became even bright in the fiendish mist. It was filled with joy, joy from the heart. A faint light covered the black sword in his hand. The fiendish mist around him seemed to suddenly be pushed by an enormous force, pushed far from Wei Xing and vanished in the blink of an eye. Yi Zheng gaped as he looked at what was happening and even forgot to continue chanting. Crack! The fiend's soul beast shattered into dozens of pieces without warning and dropped to the ground. The cuts were peerlessly smooth. Even that pair of unbreakable pincers were dismembered into several sections. A sword shadow appeared behind Wei Sheng. The shadow of the sword went from blurry to clear, and continued to grow. In a few dozen breaths, the sword figure was dozens of zhang tall. The tip of the sword pointed at the sky. It showed no signs of stopping. It broke through the fiendish mist as though it was going to pierce the sky. Under the colossal sword shadow, Wei Xing stood majestically. Thunder rolled through the fiendish mist, tens of thousands of fiend's soul beasts howled simultaneously. The blood-red sky seemed to boil. A worldly apparition. Chapter 362, When fighting all out, Huai Boy's head was covered in sweat. He had solved 5 of the dozen problems in front of him, but he was stuck on the 6th question. The hourglass beside him did not show any signs of stopping. Seeing the layer of sand at the top half decrease at a visible rate, another layer of sweat appeared on Huai Boy's forehead. He had never thought that the prison-breaking battle of the Wasteland Beast chessboard would require him to solve problems. In this era of Yao art houses, intermediate Yao arts made up the majority of Yao arts, working cooperatively in groups was the mainstream. In the history of Yao, there had never been such a time when teamwork had been so emphasized. To gather the power of a team to explore Yao arts was the dominant method. The Yao art houses that understood this, and could teach their student very well. Analysis and deconstruction were techniques which every student was required to learn. In order to exercise the student's skills, a rich library of problems could not be lacking. In addition to those public question banks, each Yao art house had their own question banks. As one of the top students of a Yao art house, solving problems was a task that he was very familiar with and skilled in. However, his confidence had been quickly crushed in front of the 12 questions of the prison battlefield. Truthfully, when he encountered the 3rd question, he had started to sweat. These problems were not esoteric. Quite the opposite, these questions were in an area every Yao was very familiar with. Little Yao arts. Even though he was at the 6th question now, it was still a problem about little Yao arts. To Huai Boy, the little Yao arts that were the rudimentary and quite distant in his memory. He had finished learning little Yao arts before he had entered the Yao art house. How old had he been then? 6. 7. Huai Boy himself couldn't remember it. However, these problems concerning the simple little Yao arts made him feel helpless from the bottom of his heart. The problems that were formulated were not obscure, the ways of thinking were not weird, they were actually open and honest. This made him feel the failure even more. He encountered difficulty on simple and straightforward little Yao art problems. Huai Boy's face was slightly ashen. Compared to Huai Boy's nervousness and depression, the spectators outside felt this scene was very boring. There were no dazzling lights, no murderous presences, no complex and profound changes. The honored prison-breaking battle was a student solving problems, yet only Huai Boy could see the problems. They could only be bored and count how many beads of sweat were on Huai Boy's forehead. The fire-faced person was totally bored and complained, "What are they doing? I thought I could see something major. This long, and it's so boring. If I knew it would be so boring, I wouldn't have gone to the trouble." "Don't be impatient," Qian Lu could only comfort. "The result will be out soon." He hadn't expected the prison-breaking battle of the Wasteland Beast chessboard would be solving problems. He had never heard of such a peaceful and non-violent prison-breaking battle. "That boy can't do it." The fire-faced person glanced over and snorted coldly, "Strong on the outside and dry on the inside." The fire-faced person suddenly changed his way of thinking and had a smile filled with schadenfreude. "Ha, there's going to be drama to see now." "Drama?" Qian Lu did not react in time. Truthfully, he was slightly disappointed too. Think about it. The little guy that those old farts taught can't even outcompete others on solving problems. Won't their faces be even more ugly than they already are? The fire-faced person was very smug. In their style, solving problems is a fundamental skill. If their fundamentals are less than others, is there anything that is more ironic than this? Thinking about it, the fire-faced person seemed to visualize the ugly faces of those old people and laughed freely. Qian Lu finally reacted. The fire-faced person was not wrong. The old farts and the young brats shared a characteristic. They were conceited. Conceited Ya always thought highly of their face. If they lost 3 spells, that was not anything major. But if they lost on solving problems, no matter if it was the old guys or the young brats, they definitely would not accept that. Thinking about it, Qian Lu couldn't help but feel anticipation. That guy came out. The fire-faced person was very excited. Qian Lu took back his thoughts as his eyes landed on the battlefield. The prison battlefield resumed its original appearance. Huai Boy dejectedly and woodenly stood in place. He had failed. In the fiendish mist, 2 figures flickered in and out of view. Wen's speed was just slightly less than Zuomo's light void wings. Wearing black armor, it was as if he was a black bolt of lightning. Wen was able to rival the Fiend's Soul Panther's speed. It had explosive speed and power was. Each impact echoed like thunder. Everyone's expressions became serious. Shu Long tightly gripped the long ji in his hand, and prepared to give aid at any moment. Both sides were amazingly fast. Even the members of Vermilion Bird Camp that always aspired towards rapid attacks had slightly changed expressions. Many people were judging inside. Could they retreat unharmed under such an explosive and sharp attack? Other than the small minority that could maintain their calm, the great majority had ugly expressions. They did not have a grasp of the battle. The rhythm was so fast it surpassed their imagination. They gaped with wide eyes at Wen's light and rapid figure. Was this still the clumsy and slow guard camp? One person and one panther were like 2 bolts of black lightning that chased each other and struggled. The hard spear thrust randomly and could freely pass through the void, far and near without any dead spots. It was unable to be defended against. The strength of the Fiend's Soul Panther also surpassed everyone's expectations. Its speed was not any less, and its strength was greater than Wen's. The sharp spear that howled as it thrust looked like it would be shattered with a blow. People's hearts felt cold when they saw this. If that blow really landed, they would instantly be crushed into powder. Wen hadn't expected this Fiend's Soul Panther would be this hard to deal with. He was much stronger than before, but he still could not do anything to the panther in front of him. No, he had to battle quickly and not hinder the advance of the troop. They had just entered the fiendish mist. The monsters that roamed the deeps of the fiendish mist would be even more powerful. If he could not defeat this panther, what would he do in the future? Thinking about it, Wen's presence suddenly became vicious and murderous. Xia Shan's expression was shocked. Ma Fan also had an astonished expression. They were very sensitive to presence and could clearly detect Wen's change. To kill the other. Boom! The red tassel turned to a ball of red fire that enveloped the head of the spear. The black fiendish energy coiled around the pole of the spear and burrowed into the burning spear point. The fiend's soul panther showed desire to retreat. It was intelligent. The troop in front of it was enormous and not one he could tear something off. If it was wounded here, it wouldn't just have lost its prey, even it would become the prey of the other fiend's soul beasts. It slowly retreated. Awen's eyes were deep black, the black energy shrouding the black armor as the spear point burned. A familiar feeling came. Every time he decided to go all out in the dueling stadium, he would enter this strange state. The killing essence in his body boiled, but his heart was ice cold. This strange state was the talisman that saved his life and allowed him to fortunately survive so many cruel battles. This was the first time Awen decided to go all out after entering guard camp. The contents of Hardship Guard flowed like water across his mind. His eyes became even deeper. The black armor on his body was exquisite and light, like it was made from layers of feathers. It was unique in guard camp. At this time, the black armor on his body slowly swayed as though it was alive. It caused the people watching to have goosebumps. The layers of metal feathers spread up Awen's face, and became a mask of small feathers. Clang clang clang. There was a string of sounds of iron brushing together, like many blades being suddenly pulled out of their sheaths at the same time. Many long feathers suddenly bounced out of Awen's black armor. The long feathers were extremely thin, the edges as sharp as knives. In an instant, a vicious and murderous energy suddenly spread out. Arching his body and holding the spear, Awen's legs were slightly spaced apart as he bent down slightly. Awen raised his face. His slender black feathers of his mask had a fine shine that was savage and cold. The fiend's soul panther smelt the scent of danger and retreated even more quickly. In a blink, it disappeared in the fiendish mist. Just at this time, the steel-long feathers that rose up off Awen's black armor shook simultaneously. A power that could destroy mountains and upend seas instantly passed into his right arm. He yelled under his mask, "Kill!" The black spear suddenly disappeared from his hand. Pia! A light sound of rupture came from the depths of the fiendish mist. Everyone's expressions changed. Awen fell down face first. Before his body could reach the ground, he was caught by a black-armored hand. It was Shu Long who had managed to get to him. Xia Shan's figure flashed and burrowed into the fiendish mist. He returned after 2 breaths, and had a panther on his hands. There was a hole the size of an egg on the fiend's soul panther's forehead. The hole penetrated the entire head. On Xia Shan's hands, the fiend's soul beast quickly turned into threads of black energy. Zuemo hurriedly ran over to Shu Long. "How is he?" "No great harm. Just exhaustion," Shu Long said respectfully. Zuemo's heart landed now. He had originally wanted Awen to test the power of the fiend's soul beast. He had not expected this handsome person to have such a fiery personality and actually kill the fiend's soul beast. Everyone was shocked by Awen's spectacular attack, especially Vermilion Bird Camp that usually had bug eyes. They received the greatest blow. The biggest impression they had of guard camp was the Crow Fiend Mo kill formation. In their views, the individual combat abilities of the hardship guards was not strong. But Awen's performance today completely flipped their entrenched impressions. So guard camp had already grown to this level. Zuemo's attention was then put onto the fiend's soul beast that Xia Shan had taken over. The fiend's soul beast quickly dissipated, and only felt behind a paw and a bead. The panther paw was covered in fine scales, and extremely hard. The sharp and curved long claws up to 5 cun long were the most eye-catching. The bead was the size of a thumb, glowing and transparent. It wasn't ordinary. This was not the time to investigate these items, so Zuemo carelessly threw them into his ring. Zuemo suddenly raised his head, his eyes as sharp as a sword that pointed straight at the deeper parts of the fiendish mist. Xia Shan and the others were only a beat behind Zuemo. They all raised their heads and looked with shock at the fiendish mist in front of them. A black tide was quickly spreading from the deeps of the fiendish mist towards them with astounding speed. Everywhere it passed, everything turned to black void. This black tide came extremely quickly. In a blink, it came in front of Mo and the others. The void that seemed endless swallowed everything. The fiendish mist that was so corrosive turned to nothing. Mo's procession seemed to be situated in a void. At the middle of the void, an enormous sword reaching the sky entered everyone's eyes. Xia Shan, who was already in Jindan, was completely pale now. Like his tail had been stepped on, he shouted in a high pitch, "Sword essence!" Ma Fan, Shu Long and the others had white faces. Mo seemed to be struck by lightning. His body freezing suddenly, he dazedly murmured lightly, "Eldest Shi Xiang." Chapter 363, The Prison Breaking 6, These are the problems I encountered. Huai Boy's mouth felt bitter. He had thought he would become a hero and had unexpectedly ended up with nothing. He had received the heavy blow in a field that he had never thought would cause him trouble. In the next few days, his mind would be quite scattered. He had memorized the problems, including the unsolved sixth problem. The other supervisors came over. Little Yao Arts? It is actually Little Yao Arts. They all wore shocked expressions. Some people felt it was nothing. How hard could a Little Yao Art problem be? Huai Boy saw the dismissive expressions, but he did not argue. The noise quickly faded. After a while, everyone started to sweat. No one had a dismissive expression anymore. In a patch of silence, everyone's sweat increased. This junior's name is Yi Zheng, a disciple of the great Buddha temple. Yi Zheng rearranged his clothing and respectfully said with a bow. The greeting he gave was one of a junior. The worldly apparition had stunned him. He could clearly feel the difference of the sword Shio's before and after states. Was that core formation? He wasn't sure, but any breakthrough that was accompanied by a worldly apparition was extraordinary. This was why he had given the bow of a junior even though the other did not look older compared to himself. Wei Xing opened his eyes. The ephemeral presence around him suddenly disappeared like it had been brushed away by wind. His eyes became peaceful again like a sharp sword being sheathed so its edges could not be seen. But after experiencing that soul-shaking scene, Yi Zheng did not dare to slack off and offend. Even more, he glanced at the remnants of the fiend's soul beast that had been cut up into multiple pieces, and his heart tightened. I am Wei Sheng, from Wukong's sword sect. Wei Xing smiled, his attitude warm and peaceful. It's an honor to meet you at last. Yi Zheng hurriedly said. Wei Xing roared with laughter. Mine is a small sect. You definitely have not heard of it. Yi Zheng instantly became a bit embarrassed. He did not know what it was. Even though this Wei Xing's attitude was friendly and warm, but he still felt an invisible pressure. It was this invisible pressure that caused him to do some actions that he usually would not. You can just call me Wei Xing. Wei Xing waved his hand. Not elder, I don't want to be old so quickly. Yi Zheng instantly felt a predicament, but he had a spark of inspiration. Big brother Wei. Wei Xing smiled and did not argue. He asked, how did you come to this place? Speaking of this, Yi Zheng's face instantly became a bitter gourd. I don't know either. I took a mission from my sect and assumed that I could earn some contribution points. I didn't expect to be this unlucky and get sent to this ghastly place. I probably can't go back. Finishing, he sighed. You definitely can go back, Wei Xing said. His tone was not strong and it was a sentence that was very ordinary, but when Yi Zheng heard it, he actually believed it. We will continue walking forward. Before this, I felt a sword essence in this direction. Wei Xing did not waste words. Raising the horse-chopping sword, he walked forward. Seeing the situation, Yi Zheng hurriedly followed. The two hadn't walked for a long time when Wei Xing suddenly stopped walking. An excited expression abruptly came onto his face. Big brother Wei, what is it? Yi Zheng carefully asked. Wei Sheng did not answer him, his eyes tightly staring at the fiendish mist in front of him. The excitement on his face grew until even his lips started to tremble. Li Water Sword Essence. Li Water Sword Essence. Shitty, the familiar Li Water Sword Essence was faintly discernible in the fiendish mist ahead of him. Wei Sheng unhesitatingly threw out the flying sword. Grabbing Yi Zheng, he stepped onto the horse-chopping sword. He currently wanted to grow wings. Taking a deep breath, he urged the sword with all his power and charged forward. Qian Lu was staring at the 6 little Yao art problems in front of him. A moment later, he raised his head. The little guy is a bit interesting. The fire-faced person asked in wonder. Little Yao art problems? This guy is really creative. I wonder which great master taught this little Yao monster. He then snickered. There is good drama to be seen now. Little Yao arts, this slap in the face is really hard. Qian Lu did not pay attention to the schadenfreude of the fire-faced person and turned his gaze back to the little Yao art problems. He was very curious what the remaining 6 problems were like. If it was said that he had been slightly curious before, then the 6 little Yao art problems had successfully raised his curiosity. Little Yao arts, Qian Lu murmured lowly as he thought inside. In his memory, there had not been any sky Yao that had such a style in the past 800 years. If one went even further back, then it was the 1,000-Year War. The records from then were very chaotic, and it was the era they had lost the most records on. There were too many Yao arts, too many sky Yao that could not be verified. What are you thinking so much for? The fire-faced person said unconcernedly. In any case, there is a spectacle to be seen. If you are lucky, maybe you will be able to see the next 6 problems. I hope the little brats work hard, so ye won't be disappointed. Qian Lu helplessly rubbed his forehead. With the fire person's rumble, his line of thinking had been interrupted. However, he agreed with the fire-faced person's words. This matter had just started. The good drama hadn't even come on stage yet. It was unknown who leaked the information, but the 6 problems of the Wasteland Beast chessboard's prison-breaking battle quickly spread. All the major Yao channels were studying these 6 little Yao art problems. When many Yao first received these 6 problems, they were very dismissive. Many Yao were even suspicious that these prison-breaking 6 problems were fake. Little Yao art problems, what a joke. But no matter if it was those that were dismissive or curious, what all the Yao did when they first received the 6 problems was strangely similar: they tried to solve them. They quickly discovered just how laughable and naive their thinking had been. At this moment, those spectators that had been so bored outside the prison battlefield finally understood how soul-shaking the seemingly boring prison-breaking battle had been. Little Yao arts were the fundamentals of all Yao arts. No Yao or school of thought would doubt this. The study of little Yao arts had only been of interest in the Yao art houses for a few years before their study was considered complete. It was not that the Yao of the time dismissed little Yao arts. It was the exact opposite. They put great importance on little Yao arts. Due to this, they had put in great amounts of Yao power and ran through all the permutations of little Yao arts. From that onwards, there were almost no new developments in little Yao arts. Those with knowledge at the time started to put more effort into intermediate Yao arts and high Yao arts. The prison-breaking 6 problems seemed to be like throwing 6 heavy stones into a peaceful pond churning the shores with great waves. The 6 little Yao art problems, put in their order, went from easy to hard. The first 3 were extremely easy and did not leave the scope of the present little Yao arts. But starting from the 4th question, it went beyond the scope of the general understanding of little Yao arts. Truthfully, Huai Boy was very skilled to have been able to reach the 6th problem. With the aid of his firm foundation, even though there were new transformations, he still used his outstanding intelligence and managed to solve the 5th problem. But up to here, he could not go any further. His head was filled with the 6th problem. He did not eat or rest, and his mind was scattered. Higher Yao, like Qian Lu, could detect a completely new road from these 6 problems that increased in difficulty, a road that was completely different than what the general understanding of Little Yao art was now. This discovery made them happy and filled with curiosity. As Yao that cultivated to their level, how could their eyes be shallow? Presently the 6 Little Yao art problems were the most popular topic of study for the Yao art houses. The teachers of many Yao art houses acted, but they quickly all encountered a roadblock. Consequently, many Little Yao art study teams came out of every Yao art house like spring bamboo after the rain. Zhang stayed in the corner and didn't dare to breathe. The reason was very simple. The room was too silent. Staring at the tips of his feet, his heart was a storm. This was definitely the most silent meeting of the Council of Elders in the clan's history. The elders of great status and power had furrowed brows and did not make any sound. What does everyone think? The one that spoke was the clan leader, Zhang Zai's father. However, even though Zhang Zai's father was the clan leader, but in this room, Zhang Zai did not have a place to sit. In fact, if it wasn't that he had successfully established a dialogue with the master of the Wasteland Beast chessboard, he wouldn't even have had the qualifications to enter this room. The Genius Alliance will not rest, an elder said hesitantly. If we worsen our relations with the Genius Alliance, it won't be good for us. Everyone knows that. Do you need to waste your breath? An elder that did not have a good temper snorted coldly. But he knows, gray scar art, that's what he says, it may not be true. The room descended into noise. Those that were shouting, those that had faces red, those that were winding up their sleeves to start fighting. Zhang Zai released a breath, and felt much more at ease. The clan leader really could not bear it anymore and said in a deep voice, "Stop." The voices finally calmed. The clan leader turned around his face. "Chief Elder, what do you think? Has everyone seen the 6 problems?" The chief elder opened his eyes, his voice was hoarse. The elders all nodded. "What does everyone think of these 6 problems?" the chief elder asked directly. "Pretty interesting. Profound. Unique." The elders chattered. The chief elder shook his head. He waited for everyone to stop talking before he opened. "In my view, these 6 questions open a new school of thought within Yao arts." When these words came out, the others rumbled. No one had expected the chief elder to have such a high opinion of the 6 Little Yao art problems, but no one doubted the chief elder's judgment. Because his judgment in countless matters had proved that chief elder's eyes were terrifyingly accurate. "Do we have any relationship with the Genius Alliance?" the chief elder suddenly asked. "No." The other elders shook their heads together. They might have some power locally, but for them, the Genius Alliance was high up and unreachable. "Without a relationship, there is no saying that our relations will worsen," the chief elder said faintly. But his authoritative gaze contained a thread of heat. "Everyone seated here today understands what gray scar art means to us. There are no free benefits in this world, so everyone should understand there is no profit without risk." The chief elder suddenly stood. Does everyone remember their oaths when they entered the Council of Elders? The other elders were excited and simultaneously stood. "Do not dare to forget. We have waited for this chance." The chief elder looked at the old visages of the other elders and sighed deeply. "Waited for too long." Chapter 364, Reunion. Standing in the middle of the 5-element sword formation, sweat was flowing down Zhuomo's back. A glowing and transparent water-shaped flame jumped silently in the air above the formation. 2 opposite presences of icy cold and explosively hot formed an exquisite balance. It was the first time that many people saw Zhuomo's water sword essence, and they had curious expressions. In their impression, Zhuo during battle was like an ancient wasteland beast, especially his brutal and physical attacks that gave people great shocks. They knew that Zhuo had once been a sword xiu, but they rarely saw Zhuo using a flying sword. It was true that Zhuo had decreased his use of a flying sword, especially after cultivating the Great Day Mo physique. All 6 changes of the Great Daimyo physique were extremely powerful, both speed and power were so strong it was almost absurd. The other important reason was that his improvement on sword essence was not very large. He didn't know why. If he cultivated emo skills and yao arts, he advanced 1,000 li a day, but when he cultivated sword scriptures, he was just slightly better than the average shoja. He gradually found that the power of the Li Water Sword Scripture could not satisfy his demands. He had even gave the 5-element sword formation to Vermilion Bird Camp to use to comprehend sword essence. When he discovered the sword Xiao in the fiendish mist was very likely to be eldest Shixiang Wei Sheng, he instantly started to hurry. What was most important now was to get in contact with eldest Shixiang. Otherwise, if the two of them moved past each other, it would not be easy to find each other again in this fiendish mist. The worldly apparition just now should be eldest Shixiang making a breakthrough. As expected of eldest Shixiang, Wei Sheng's talent in the sword wasn't just a bit stronger than his. The void sword essence that eldest Shixiang had released during his breakthrough had given him inspiration. If eldest Shixiang could detect his sword essence, couldn't he get into contact with eldest Shixiang? Eldest Shixiang had just made a breakthrough, his energy and mind should be in his best condition, and it would be easier for him to detect the sword essence that was released. In order to release the strongest sword essence, Zuemo even took out his 5-element sword formation that he had not used for a long time. In the 5-element sword formation, the water element formation was his Li Water Sword essence, and it was perfect for this purpose. The Li Water Sword scripture that he had not used for a long time seemed multiple times more difficult to control at the beginning, but he gradually found the feeling. In the cold and silent water flame sword essence, the explosive power was like the undercurrents beneath the surface of the water. Zuemo channeled Ling power in and the 5 flying swords lit up. The sword essence also grew explosively. Zuemo's sword essence had not improved, but his Ling power and skill in formations were much stronger than before. When he used all his power, the sword essence instantly became large. Ling power was being used up with astounding speed. Zuemo gradually had an expression of effort on his face. The other people looked on curiously as Zuemo set up a formation and casted his sword scripture. They did not understand Zuemo's intentions. After a while, a thin thread-like howl sounded from deep within the fiendish mist as though it came from the horizon. This howl was very weak, but everyone present had pretty good strength and could detect it clearly. All of them were alarmed and readied their guard. The howl became louder and started to hum. 2 breaths later, the sound changed and became thunderous as it neared with terrifying speed. Xie Shan and Ma Fan paled. Before they could react, a sword Xiao on a flying sword appeared out of the air in front of everyone. The sword Xiao stared hard at Zuemo inside the sword formation. Boom! The fiendish mist behind him exploded towards the 2 sides without any warning. With explosive sounds, a ruler straight and wide passage appeared behind him as though it was opening a road in the fiendish mist. The air gusted and blew, but the figure of the sword Xiao did not move at all. A breath later. Whoosh! Like an avalanche, the fiendish mist followed the long path behind the sword Xiao. The tailwind was so strong. Everyone's desire to fight almost instantly collapsed. No matter if it was Xie Shan and Jin Dan, or Ma Fan that had his sword essence manifestation, or Shu Long that had formed his weapon, their rock-hard mentality cracked a sliver. The figure appeared first before the sound came. Such speed was shocking to even hear about. Is it shitty? Eldest Shixiang. 2 voices were filled with joy and emotion as they sounded at the same time. Wei Xing jumped down from the flying sword in front of Zuemo. After examining him for a moment, he smiled brightly and said, "This appearance is much more pleasing to the eye than before." Lin Qian had a jade scroll that had Zuemo's new appearance mirage. This was the first time he had seen Shitty's new face in person. The face in front of his eyes was very unfamiliar, but Wei Xing could still feel the familiar presence. This caused him to smile. Zuemo felt something in his throat, and his nose went sour. Wei Xing patted Zuemo's shoulder and smiled. He said, "It is a happy occasion for us brothers to gather together." don't be like a woman. Eldest Shixiang should not underestimate me. Infected by Wei Sheng's smile, Zuemo puffed out his chest and pretended to be a manly man. The two looked at each other. Finding the joy in each other's eyes, they laughed together. None of them had thought that they would encounter each other in this place. The joy at reuniting overcame everything else. The dangerous fiendish mist seemed so adorable right now. The two of them did not worry at all. The situation at the front line was stabilizing. Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia was already completely possessed by Yaoma. Previously the Jia was like the Shouja's backyard, where they hunted Yaoma, and was now split between the Yao and the Mo. She looked at the completely transformed Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia. She was filled with confidence that the Yaoma would achieve the final victory of this war. Wherever she looked, countless war Yao trees formed a forest. The air was filled with the poison released by Highland Hell's bells. Even Jindan Shouja, if they were careless and their Ling power touched the poison, they would be in extreme danger. Large amounts of dangerous plants almost covered all of the empty ground. For Shouja, this was definitely a swamp. If they entered, they would not come out. But for Yao, in this place, their advantages could increase their combat abilities multiple times. Supposedly, the Council of Elders was inviting some Sky Yao Darren to add another layer of defenses to the Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia. By that time, the Blood Sky Metropolis Jia would be impenetrable. In the region that the Mo had occupied, they were changing it to grow Mo Seed Sea. Once the Mo Seed Sea was constructed, it would become a natural barrier that was almost impossible to cross. In Mu Shi's view, if the Yaoma could construct the defensive line of Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia, the Yaoma would be in an undefeatable position and have the initiative. From the start of the war until now, the strategic goals of the Council of Elders had been fulfilled remarkably well, and the results were outstanding. The reason that it had proceeded so smoothly was due to the element of surprise. The long peace had numbed the high levels of the large Shouja sects, so in this stage of battle, the responses of the Shouja were very slow, and they continuously lost. What would happen next was that the war would enter a state of attrition. This was a cruel and tragic phase. Mu Shi did not dare to underestimate the Shouja. On the surface, the Yao were dominating, but she knew what they had encountered up until now were the fringe sects of the Shouja. She suddenly thought of the youth called Lin Qian and the elite Shouja under his command. Lin Qian had the great mannerisms of a general, and had pointed out her origins from a single sentence. What shocked her was that he was a battle general with abilities comparable to her. How many battle generals did the Shouja have that were like Lin Qian? She did not know. In the higher levels of the Yao realm, no one assumed that they would easily obtain victory. The Shouja had won the 1,000-year war. They had captured a countless amount of resources. Adding on the development of 1,000 years, no one knew how rich they were. So before starting the war, everyone had prepared for hard battle. However, the victories came easier than expected. She was worried that the string of victories make some of the elders overconfident. In these few days in Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia, she occasionally would hear young combat Yao in groups that demanded to continue their advance. This place had an overzealous mood, and showed signs of losing control. In the following battles, if they relied on the defensive line of Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia, and turned this place into a meat grinder, that would greatly reduce the strength of Shouja, and when the final battle came, the Yao would have a great advantage. If they attacked first and lost the strategic advantage of Bloody Sky Metropolis Jia's natural barrier, they would end up in an extremely reactive position. However, she knew her words carried little weight, and could only keep her worries to herself. It probably was that she was just worried for nothing, she mocked herself inside. The middle-aged person did not think as deeply as Mu Shi. The busy scene in front of him caused all the blood in his body to boil, and filled with the desire to fight. However, he had been Mu Shi's vice-commander for a long time and was very familiar with Mu Shi. He asked in curiosity, "What is Darren thinking?" "Nothing." Mu Shi shook her head. Noticing that Mu Shi's mood was not good, the middle-aged person was slightly puzzled, but he was wise and did not ask. He switched the top and said with a smile, "Does Darren know? Something big happened recently." "What big matter?" "Moo," she said disinterestedly. "Vast water clear skies was broken, the new prison is called Wasteland Beast Chessboard," the middle-aged person said with a smile. "Oh." Moo, she was slightly astonished. Of course she knew of vast water clear skies. Even though as a battle general, her proficiency with normal Yao arts was very average, but she still knew vast water clear skies. How many years had it been since the last prison-breaking battle? Seeing Musia finally have an interested expression, the mood of the middle-aged person became slightly better. He narrated, supposedly, many people saw that prison-breaking battle. The entire battle was very fierce, but this mysterious youth in the end succeeded. However, the matter is just beginning. Rumors quickly spread that this youth was challenging the Genius Alliance. Someone is causing trouble. Moo, she raised an eyebrow. This subordinate thinks the same. The middle-aged person continued, but this youth did not come out and refute it. Darren, you also know the personalities of the Genius Alliance. Proud. Moo, she unhesitatingly blurted out. She suddenly thought of her younger brother that had the label of a genius. He also was a member of the Genius Alliance. The clan had great hopes for him. Darren's evaluation is very accurate, the middle-aged person said with a smile. So how could the Genius Alliance let it rest? They gathered and decided to break the Wasteland Beast chessboard. The prison-breaking battle should not be activated so easily. Of course, but Genius Alliance is really full of geniuses. One of their supervisors really activated the prison-breaking battle. And then? Moo, she asked curiously. Her appetite had been whetted. In that prison-breaking battle, the prison battlefield demanded that this Genius Alliance supervisor to solve 12 Yao art problems within a required time. At first, this supervisor had a smooth time, but he was left stuck on the 6th question, and in the end, did not complete the prison-breaking battle. Such a pity. Moo, she smacked her lips, but her tone was not pitying at all. When this supervisor came out, he wrote down these 6 problems, and this caused a great ruckus. What type of Yao art problems are these 6 Yao art problems? Moo, she was very sensitive. The middle-aged person's expression was slightly strange. Little Yao art problems. Little Yao art? Moo, she's face was shocked. Her expression quickly became weird. She could imagine what expressions those geniuses had when they saw the 6 little Yao art problems. These 6 problems are being called the prison-breaking 6 problems. Even though they are little Yao art problems, but they are very difficult and of a new perspective. They clearly are of a new school of thought, the middle-aged person said sternly. Moo, she nodded. She understood the difficulty involved. Unexpectedly, this matter had new developments yesterday. The expression of the middle-aged person became strange again. Chapter 365, Let's have a discussion. The 6th problem had been solved. The news swept through almost all the Yao art houses like a strong gust of wind and was as if someone had thrown a spark into a pot of oil. Originally, the prison-breaking 6 problems were unexpected and unconventional, but it was not enough to cause everyone to pursue a solution. Even though the conflict between the mysterious prison-breaking Yao and the Genius Alliance had been aggrandized, those with some intelligence would not put too much importance on it. The matter clearly a manipulation by someone from the shadows. Everyone watched it with the intentions of witnessing the spectacle and for amusement. No one believed the mysterious prison-breaking Yao could defeat the Genius Alliance. Any normal Yao would clearly arrive at this conclusion. So when Huai Boy had succeeded in activating the prison-breaking battle, everyone watched but felt it was expected. Everyone had been speculating on when the Genius Alliance would break the prison. One of the Genius Alliance's supervisors had activated the prison-breaking battle. The Genius Alliance had so many supervisors. Breaking the prison was just a matter of time. The prison-breaking 6 problems were novel to everyone, and showed everyone a completely different way of thinking. To be able to create something unique in the little Yao arts which had been studied so thoroughly, the strength of the mysterious prison-breaking Yao could not be underestimated. Some powerful great Yao and famed teachers from famed Yao art houses gave their praises, and were in agreement that they favored the potential of the mysterious prison-breaking Yao and thought his future was limitless. Even as the prison-breaking 6 problems increasingly attracted the attention of more and more Yao, but in the eyes of the public, this wasn't anything. Each year, a few brilliant stars would appear and be praised by these so-called famed teachers, but the great majority would gradually grow dim and lose their standing. But just as everyone was waiting for the Genius Alliance to make a new move, everyone noticed a strange occurrence. The solution to the 6th prison-breaking problem had not been announced. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. The topic of the mysterious prison-breaking Yao versus the Genius Alliance had lost its fervor and interest waned, but there was still no news of the answer to the 6th problem. It wasn't known who first mentioned this strange situation, but it instantly attracted everyone's attention. Was the 6th problem this difficult? Everyone had been somewhat disinterested in this matter, but their appetites were whet again. The people inside the Genius Alliance did not place much importance on this matter. They were full of confidence. Huai Boy had not successfully completed the prison breaking, but it definitely was a good beginning. Young geniuses. The Alliance did not lack geniuses. Many supervisors were wondrously in consensus over this matter. They did not disturb the higher ranks. They firmly believed that they could solve this matter based on their individual strengths. Yet when the outside world started to discuss when the answer to the 6th problem would come out, they suddenly found to their shock, that without their notice, they had all been stuck on this problem. Now everyone was in a hurry. The branches of the Genius Alliance at each Jia changed their lax attitude and quickly formed teams to work together on the problem. At last, on the 9th day, the answer to the 6th problem came out. The appetite of the outside world was very high. When the 6th problem's answer came out, it pushed the matter of mystery prison-breaking Yao versus Genius Alliance to the top again. Everyone suddenly found that it wouldn't be so easy for the Genius Alliance to win. A battle with great power disparity naturally would not be interesting to many eyes. But when the underdog they had thought would lose in 1 round had endured for 10, left in a better shape than they anticipated and with a glimmer of hope, the interest of the spectators skyrocketed. There wasn't just 1 or 2 groups that wanted to see the Genius Alliance be left looking like fools. "We must retaliate," the supervisor from the Lilium Jia said excitedly. His temper was explosive to start with, and he had been very stimulated by the words from the outside. "Yes. We have to retaliate," the other supervisors agree with excited expressions. When had these proud individuals ever endured so much mockery and disdain? They firmly believed that the Genius Alliance gathered the most outstanding geniuses of the Yao. They felt very proud of themselves for being among them. Just took us a few extra days of effort, and all the scum have come out. We have to make them see the reality. Another supervisor shrugged with a helpless expression. Even if it is a bit cruel. What does everyone think? We can't just get beat up like this. When has our Genius Alliance ever lost like this? The supervisor from the Lilium Jia said. Very simple, increase the reward. Yes, brave ones will come for a great reward. The Yao supervisors had a common enemy and all gave their suggestions towards a plan. Everyone contribute a few credits. Once we have a few hundred. I don't believe that no one in the Alliance won't take it. I will contribute 10 credit points. I will donate 20. The supervisors discussed and felt that this was a good plan. Not every member of the Genius Alliance had an outstanding family to support them. The Alliance did not lack members that came from those poor families. The majority of these people that entered the Genius Alliance chose to do so due to the great benefits the Genius Alliance provided. These Yao cared about material gain, and not reputation. They usually did not interact with these supervisors, and could be considered to be a clearly separated group. However, these Yao had a fatal weakness, credit points. The credits of the Genius Alliance were really just contribution points. They were able to exchange all kinds of Yao arts and worldly treasures for credit points from the alliance. When they encountered a troublesome problem, the supervisors instantly remembered these people that they usually looked down upon. In the corner, Huai Boy did not make a sound. His complexion was fragile, but an indiscernible cold smile floated at the corner of his mouth. These past few days, the other supervisors had been ignoring and shunning him, and he deeply felt how cold people here were. He knew the reason. Many supervisors felt discontented that of all the supervisors it was he that activated the prison-breaking battle. If he had succeeded, he would be a hero and the discontent would have been suppressed. They would have fawned over him. But he was defeated, so he became the target of disdain. He suddenly felt he was slightly laughable. Why was he together with such an ungenerous and obnoxious crowd that thought highly of themselves? He silently looked on and smirked coldly inside. The troop would advance a distance every day. If they stopped, Zhuo Mo would start drinking with Wei Sheng. The alcohol wasn't anything good, but the two were very happy when they drank. They spoke of what happened to them in these few years, reminiscing on the interesting things that happened in their sect in the past. They sighed. Speaking of it, if it wasn't for these incidents, we wouldn't be who we are today. The alcohol was going to Zhuo Mo's head. He did not use Ling power to suppress the effects of the alcohol. He said with a smile, without the troubles and worries in the past, how could Shixiang's sword heart be so strong? Without the dangers along this road, I don't know in which little corner I would be in trying to pass the days. I'd probably be just farming Ling fields or something. Right. Wei Sheng gulped down a large mouthful of alcohol, and allowed the excess liquid to freely flow down along his neck. He suddenly said, "Shitty, what is your goal?" Goal? Zhuo Mo stilled. He tilted his head and thought for a while. Then he counted on his fingers as he said, "First, heal a Gue, and then investigate my origins. However, this second matter cannot be forced. I don't have too much hope. Most importantly, make more Jingshi and give everyone good days so I do not fail them for choosing to accompanying me through these dangers." Ha! Wei Sheng gave a booming laugh. Apart 3 days, I have a different view of you. Shitty in the past was the one most afraid of trouble. You now have great goals. Good, good. Zhuo Mo's face blushed at Wei Sheng's words. What great ambitions. I'm unable to get off the horse. Shixiang, don't laugh at me. This is good. Wei Sheng put down the wine pouch in his hand and said seriously, I always felt that Shitty did not lack talent, but your personality was somewhat carefree. Now that Shitty has resolve, you naturally will have accomplishments. Even our sect cannot compare at all to the followers that Shitty has now. What about Shixiang? What goals do you have? Zhuo Mo asked curiously. Me? Wei Sheng thought for a second and suddenly gulped wine. When he put down the pouch, his expression was grave. In this life, I pursue the pinnacle of the sword. Wei Sheng's words were strong and steely without any hesitation or fright. Good. In Zhuo Mo's sea of consciousness, Pu Yao couldn't resist praising. Threads of admiration came into Zhuo Mo's heart. He recalled the jade scroll that eldest Shixiang had given him that recorded the hardships that eldest Shixiang encountered in his search for the sword. They flowed past his eyes. Of all the people he ever encountered, in terms of determination, eldest Shixiang was undoubtedly ranked first. Only people like eldest Shixiang were able to walk to the peak of the sword path. Zhuo Mo was shocked and admiring, but when the words reached his mouth, they became, Shixiang, let's have a discussion. Discussion? What matter? Zhuo Mo's change was so sudden that Wei Sheng did not have the time to react. Shixiang pursues the sword path, how can it work without true combat? Combat is the best way to advance. Zhuo Mo lowered his face and did not disguise his true expression. He snickered and said fawningly, how about we go together, I'll provide food, shelter, and Jingshi. Shixiang, don't worry, we lack for everything, but we won't lack for fighting. We will definitely satisfy Shixiang and make it extremely fulfilling. That sword path comprehension, experience, they will rise, and be unable to be stopped even if you want it to. If you are lucky, you might get an intimate friend of the fairer sex, a sword couple in paired cultivation, and to seek the path together. Didn't they say something like the warm home is the hero something? Oh, Shi Xiang is a true and honest person, and naturally will not be affected by beauty. Wei Xing gaped and did not realize the alcohol was spilling onto his body. Zuo continued to talk for a while until his throat was dry. He finally stopped and took a gulp of alcohol to moisten his throat before he asked Wei Xing with a strong face, Shi Xiang, your opinion? Wei Xing pointed at Zuo and laughed. To hope that a lazy guy like you would be serious is like hoping a sow can climb up a tree. It seemed that he hadn't put in enough effort. Seeing this, Zuo took a large gulp of alcohol, moistened his throat and prepared to start again. A crisp voice came into Zuo's ears. Zuo, who had been preparing his emotions and preparing to start persuading again and didn't react in time and almost spat out the alcohol. What? Choked by the wine, Zuo had dead fish eyes as he turned to look at Wei Xing. Wei raised the alcohol pouch and put it in front of Zuo. He smiled freely. Yes. Zuo was overjoyed when he reacted. Raising his alcohol pouch, the two pouches collided together. That night, Zuo dreamed of Shi Xiang as a giant that killed in all directions at the front, and he was at the back and furiously counting Jingshi with a dumb smile on his face. So much Jingshi, he couldn't count it all. Chapter 366, Yizheng of the Great Buddha Temple. Opening his eyes, Zuo felt a splitting headache. He finally recalled that he and Shi Xiang had drank all night and apparently had gone crazy later on, singing and dancing. He didn't even know how they had finally passed out. He struggled up and walked out of the room. The outside was still misty. Not far away, Xia Shan was respectfully asking Wei Xing for advice. He occasionally nodded and was as obedient as an underling. Zuo lifted the corners of his mouth and silently snickered. It must have been that Shi Xiang's worldly apparition that had deeply shocked Xia Shan. Zuo did not disturb the two and randomly walked about. The 5 slave transporting boats were placed apart and formed an enormous circle around the campsite. Having suddenly added a strong member, everyone's morale grew. They put even more effort into their daily cultivation. The worldly apparition when Wei Xing had his breakthrough hadn't shocked just Xia Shan. A Wen had awoken. Thinking about how the fiend's soul beast had forced him into such a state, and especially in front of boss, he was very dejected. Starting early in the morning, he started to run around the campsite wanting to encounter another fiend's soul beast to defeat. The warlike 10th grade was not willing to fall back and tightly followed behind. Lil, Pagoda and Lil, Fire affectionately nudged Ague. Ague was wooden and would only respond once in a while. Whenever it happened, Lil, Fire and Lil, Pagoda would be very excited. Silly Bird raised her head high, and stalked around with her unique bird walk as she passed majestically beside Zuo without even glancing at him. For some unknown reason, Zuo's heart was filled with warmth. His mood seemed full of sunlight and was unusually bright. Even the blood-red sky seemed to become much more amicable. He suddenly remembered that the fiend's soul beast Awen had left behind a paw and a bead. He hurriedly took them out. The paw was as hard as steel, deep black and shiny. The claws on the paw were especially sharp. When he gently swiped it against the ground, it created 5 deep scratches. With Zuo's eyes, he was unable to distinguish what kind of material it was. This is a fiend-heavy weapon, very rare. It is a natural weapon. It is the first time I have seen a fiend-heavy weapon of such quality. You brat, you really have good luck. Only a vicious fiendish land sealed for tens of thousands of years like this can form such powerful fiend soul beasts, and produce these kind of fiend-heavy weapons. Pu Yao was filled with emotion. Zuo waved the paw around a bit, and felt it was not very comfortable. He said, "This is probably worth a lot of Jingshi." The emotional Pu Yao stopped breathing. His temple throbbed. He forcibly suppressed himself. This isn't for Xiuzhe use, it's for Yao. Zuo was very disappointed, and his expression was disinterested. If something could not be traded for Jingshi, how could it be considered good? He had so many subordinates that cultivated Mo skills, but there were none that cultivate the Yao arts. Wait, he suddenly thought of the flower slaves in guard camp. Didn't they cultivate Yao arts? They can't use them. Pu Yao finally learned the joy of beating down Zuo Mo's hopes, and drawled, what they cultivate is the flower Yao coexistence art. Their weapon is the Ling flower in their bodies. Oh, they should be called Yao flowers now. Fiend heavy weapons are vicious things, they are not something that normal Yao can use. Could not be traded for Jingshi, none of his subordinates could use it, and neither could normal Yao. Was this just trash? Without another words, Zuo threw it into the ring, and picked up the bead. This is something good. Zuo became alert. He didn't understand something like the fiend heavy weapon, but he could recognize this bead. Normal fiend souls would have a thread of soul base source. How could fiend soul beasts not have any? This bead was their core, and inside was a huge amount of soul base essence that was extremely pure. Upon further thought, Zuo understood. These fiend soul beasts were formed from fiend souls. They consumed other fiend souls and continuously grew. It would take at least 100,000 fiend souls to form a fiend soul beast. Fiend souls beasts had a basic intelligence and instinctively understood how to cultivate the rudimentary spells of the fiendish energy. No one had disturbed this ancient battlefield for tens of thousands of years. The fiend souls formed here had experienced the cruelest slaughter. It could be imagined how strong their soul was. Zuo instantly found that the fishing they had been so proud of before was really very inefficient and idiotic. Out of the corner of his eyes, he coincidentally saw Gongsun Cha coming over. His body flashed and he jumped next to Gongsun Cha. Before Gongsun Cha could relax, he shoved the bead into Gongsun Cha's mouth. With a moment of inattentiveness, Gongsun Cha's eyes bulged out as he was tricked. One breath later, Miss Shy face that originally had a faint blush became completely red. Gongsun Cha's entire body quickly became red. He pointed with a trembling finger at Zuo but could not say a word. His eyes suddenly widened, and then he ran away. Ha! Behind him was Zuo Mo's heartless laughter. The fiend heavy weapon was useless, the core bead was used to trick Miss. Zuo suddenly felt that there was nothing to do. The troop was temporarily resting at this spot. Through Shixiang's description, Zuo knew that the size of this fiendish mist surpassed his imagination. The native beings that he had originally thought were present turned out to be eldest Shixiang. Now he wasn't in a rush to advance. Golden Soul. Did you forget Golden Soul? Pu Yao couldn't resist reminding. Zuo hit his head. Right, how could he forget that matter? Yi Zheng's shock grew. He might not be a core disciple of Great Buddha Temple, but he had rudimentary knowledge. Great Buddha Temple was already a strong sect in their jia but... His eyes swept across those shoujo working hard at their cultivation. Even though it was not the first time he saw them, his heart couldn't resist jumping. The cultivations of these shoujo were not high, and their ningmai cultivation were comparable to the normal disciples of the temple. However, if the disciples of the temple had a conflict with these group of people, not even their bones would remain. This was killing intent. Killing energy that made his heart beat rapidly. Elite. This word suddenly jumped into his head. Only those elite that had experienced hundreds of bloody fights would have such concentrated killing energy. The temple also had these kind of elite Dhyana soldiers. He had seen them before. Those Dhyana soldiers did not have high individual cultivation. One would only know how strong they were only when one fought them. They were vicious and battle-hardened, and did not care about sustaining wounds. Yi Zheng had once been completely suppressed by a Dhyana soldier with a cultivation lower than his own. In the following 5-on-5 match, they had not even lasted for 20 breaths before they lost. If it wasn't that it was a match with the sect, they would have died. This Shixiang, greetings. A warm and gentle voice sounded from behind him. Yi Zheng's mind shifted. Turning around, joy instantly came onto his face. He was facing a Diana Xiu. This troop actually had Diana Xiu. Yi Zheng carefully examined the other. Even though the other was not wearing a monk robe and a kasaya, but the trace of a Diana Xiu aura could not be faked. He instantly felt much closer to the other and hurriedly returned the greeting. This little monk gives greetings. This little brother is Zhongru. If Shixiang has any matters, you can find me. Zhongru had a faint smile hanging on his face. Yi Zheng felt astonished inside. The other's cultivation was not lower than his. Diana Xiu emphasized their samadhi skill the most. He gave a slight smile as well, and bowed deeply. Shixiang is too courteous. This little brother is of low cultivation. I am currently lost and in need of help. Please, Shixiang, take care of me. Everyone is together in this dangerous land. Helping each other is rational. Zhongru smiled and waved his right hand. Why don't we go this little brother's room? If Shixiang has any questions, please ask there. Yes. Yi Zheng hurriedly said. He followed behind Zhongru and walked as Xiuzha occasionally bowed to Zhongru along the way. He thought inside, it seemed that this Zhongru Shixiang had a high status among this group. Zhongru's room was very simple. Other than the 2 meditation mats, there were no other objects. A simple place. You have seen a joke, Zhongru said with a smile. No, no. Shixiang's place is perfect for the serene samadhi path. This little brother feels admiration, Yi Zheng hurriedly said. Zhongru smiled. Which sect does Shixiang come from? Where did you cultivate before? Yi Zheng thought inside that the true aim had come out. He answered, this little monk is a disciple from Great Buddha Temple, and cultivated at He Residence Mountain before. Great Buddha Temple. Zhongru made a sound and suddenly thought of something. He asked with shock, Great Buddha Temple of Temple Sijie. Shixiang knows this humble temple. Yi Zheng slightly let out a breath at the other's shock. To his shock, he found that everything he had seen in this day and night had unconsciously put pressure on him. Haha, the honored temples, Great Buddha Dhyana Records, is one of the 8 great Dhyana records of Xian Kong territoires and is renowned. This little brother may be sheltered and ignorant but still knows the honored Great Buddha Temple. Yi Zheng did not feel any smugness. If it really was like the other had said, Zhongru would not have made a sound like he did. His mind shifted. Where did Shixiang learn? Zhongru gave a reminiscent expression. He said with a smile, speaking of that, I'm not afraid Shixiang would laugh. This one has no teacher. This one only encountered a master in the past that passed on some basic dhyana spells. Yi Zheng did not believe it. Zhongru's cultivation was clearly not weaker than his, and his samadhi skill was even deeper. The study of any other spells could have the possibility of a shortcut, but not samadhi. Even if it was a fundamental, but there was no room for shortcuts. Zhongru's Ling power ripples were as deep and steady as the ocean. His samadhi skill was clearly very high. Seeing Yi Zheng's expression, Zhongru understood. He did not explain. Shixiang has come from the Xian Kong territories, we have come from the Kunlun territoires. There are thousands of li between us. It is a matter of dhyana karma that we have met on this ancient battlefield. Yi Zheng nodded. Shixiang's words are great kindness. He already believed the words. Almost all the Dhyana Xiu temples of the world gathered in the Xian Kong territories. The Kunlun territories were famed for their sword Xiu. He had never heard of them having a large Dhyana Xiu temple. Upon closer examination, he found that while Zhongru had deep dhyana cultivation, but it was possible to see signs of age and hardship between the brows. He clearly had gone through hardships in his cultivation. The Dhyana Sho disciples of large temples did not like luxury, but they did not have to worry about material things. They could rest their hearts and cultivate their dhyana, and it was rare for them to have hard times. He suddenly thought of the ancient battlefield that Zhong-ru had just mentioned, and couldn't help but ask, "This is an ancient battlefield?" We came in from the outer fringes, and saw many corpses and bones along the way. But it has been too long, and they would disintegrate when touched. Darren said that this ancient battlefield is tens of thousands of years old. Zhong-ru did not conceal it. Tens of thousands of years. Yi Zhang's expression shifted, and then he sank into 10,000 years. Ancient battlefield, the great Buddha temple was one of the 8 great temples. With a long history, it had many temple records. He thought back and tried to recall what records would match this. Seeing Yi Zhang in deep thought, Zhong-ru did not hurry him and patiently waited. A long while later, Yi Zhang suddenly murmured in a low voice, "Can it be? Can it be?" Deep terror suddenly appeared in his eyes. Chapter 367, Illusory Formations and Qinghua Zhang Shui Nan Yu looked helplessly at Sang Zhe who was beside her. A few days ago, this guy had found her and was sticking to her without moving a step away. No matter how she tried, she couldn't get him to go away. Fortunately, his attitude was respectful and he was not impolite. When Nan Yu had the time, she would come to the Wasteland Beast chessboard to wait for Darren. Sang Zhe also waited alongside her. Darren had not appeared for many days. Did something happen? Nan Yu was slightly worried. But this strong female Yao did not show her worries in her expressions. In front of Sang Zhe, she was always steady and composed. She had never felt the days were so hard to go through. When each piece of news surfaced, her heart would tighten. The prison-breaking battle was activated, the 6th problem was solved, the challenge from the Genius Alliance. She lived every day with a rapidly drumming heart. She never doubted Darren's strength because she never believed that Darren could defeat the Genius Alliance. But she would still be worried. No matter how strong the Genius Alliance was, what did it have to do with her? She was Darren's follower. Just as she was panicking, a familiar voice came from behind her. "This is where you are." Hearing this voice, Nan Yu almost cried. She suppressed the urge and said with a lowered head, "Darren. How was your recent cultivation?" Zhuo asked. He glanced at Sang Zhe at the side. Nan Yu instantly stammered. Her mind distracted with all kinds of news these past days, how could she be in a mood to cultivate? Zhuo creased his brow and did not blame her. He asked curiously, "What happened?" In his eyes, Nan Yu was a cultivation-obsessed person, no, a cultivation-obsessed Yao. It was really abnormal for her to neglect cultivating. Nan Yu instantly felt ashamed and wanted to find a crack in the ground to burrow into. "Darren, it's the matter of the Genius Alliance. Nan Yu, you are too weak, just this minor bit of news, and you cannot cultivate." She was filled with self-blame. Genius Alliance? Zhuo paused. His first response was, "What a grandiose name." His second response was, "What is that? What is that?" Nan Yu's tongue tied up and she did not know how to reply. At the side, Sang Zhe's expression was also strange. "Darren has not heard of Genius Alliance?" Sang Zhe probed. "No." Zhuo shook his head. "Very strong. Do they have Sky Yao?" Sang Zhe swallowed. "They did before. In their history, the Genius Alliance produced, oh." Zhuo realized. So they had ancestors who were. Sang Zhe swallowed the words that reached his mouth, his expression abject. Out of caution, Zhuo secretly asked Pu Yao, "Have you heard of this Genius Alliance?" Pu Yao didn't even bat an eye and said irritably, "Don't bother me with these insignificant nobodies." Seemed that this wasn't a famous faction. Zhuo silently judged according to Pu Yao's response. Have they made trouble for you? Zhuo Mo's courage grew and his tone was slightly unfriendly. No, Nan Yu weakly replied. She hesitated before saying, they are trying to find trouble with you. Me? Zhuo Mo pointed at his nose as he asked in shock. Nan Yu quietly narrated the cause. Looking at Darren's attitude, he did not seem to know the Genius Alliance. Her explanation was very detailed. However, how could Darren not know Genius Alliance? How could there be a Yao that did not know the Genius Alliance? Understood. Zhuo Mo nodded and smacked his lips. With a dismissive face, he made his final conclusion. They don't have the skills, and dislike people that earn more than they do. Seeing Nan Yu's face was still worried, he waved his hand and said, why care about them? A deranged group. Putting so much effort into prison breaking, there isn't any money there. Full of it and have nothing better to do. Nan Yu and Sang Zei's expressions were strange. At this time, they could not find the words to describe their current mood. Darren was really deep and profound. He. It really is full of it and they have nothing better to do. A sweet voice passed over. A shapely body appeared in everyone's field of view. The tight evening dress highlighted her curvaceous body, the full and soft chest almost bursting out, the hair styled in a high updo and revealing the snowy white neck. A faintly discernible smile on the face, was highly seductive. There was a small mole at the corner of her red and moist lips that added a hint of enchantment. Sang Zei and Nan Yu were dazed. This female Yao was like a burning flame that could melt people's bones. This restless feeling was a bit familiar. Zhuo Mo was dazed for a moment and then was furious. She dared to use illusions. The tragic memory that the paper crane female had left on him back on Wukong Mountain surfaced in his mind. Gu hates illusory techniques the most. The furious Zhuo Mo did not hesitate to give a powerful counterattack. His hands secretly made a move, little thousand-leaf art, bone-crushing obscuring flash. A invisible wind spread in ripples. The female Yao seemed to be heavy-struck. Her body shook, and her face paled as she gave a delicate cry of pain. Her expression was pained, her brows slightly creased, her eyes unfocused. On the slightly bent body, the snowy white mounds on her chest moved. Even the delicate cry was seductive and caused people's hearts to heat up. Sang Zei's breathing suddenly became heavy as his eyes turned red. Nan Yu also felt her body was unusually heated. She felt the female in front of her was overbearingly beautiful. Such a powerful illusory technique. Still not giving up. Zhuo Mo glared and his anger increased. His hand gave 3, bone-crushing obscuring wind. Bone-crushing obscuring wind was the 9th move of Little Thousand-Leaf Hands. After the encounter at 100 Flower Alliance, Zhuo Mo had relentlessly urged Pu Yao to teach him a move of Little Thousand-Leaf Hands that specialized in breaking illusory techniques. He hadn't thought he would encounter such a powerful illusory technique the first time he used it. 3 bursts of wind hit the female Yao at the same time. The female Yao's eyes suddenly straightened as though she was struck by lightning. Her hairdo exploded. As her locks fell down, a stream of blood came from the corner of her mouth. The hate-filled and piercing voice suddenly stopped. The light flashed on her body and she disappeared. She had been pushed out of the wasteland beast chessboard by Zhuo Mo's 4th, bone-crushing obscuring wind. Zhuo Mo finally released a breath. Turning his face, he saw Sang Zei and Nan Yu look dumbly at him, and warned them gravely, this female's illusory technique is very powerful. You have to be very careful. Do not fall for it. Illusory technique. Nan Yu and Sang Zei looked at each other in confusion. They still did not know what had happened. Where had there been an illusory art? Had there really been a powerful illusory art? Sang Zei's heart was filled with regret. It was the first time he had seen such a seductive being. Such a pity. But why would she cast an illusory art? Even though he was filled with regret, Sang Zei finally calmed down and felt that Zhuo Mo was even more powerful. It definitely was a very powerful illusory art if he hadn't detected it at all. Darren's strength was, as expected, immeasurable. He suddenly rejoiced slightly that the Council of Elders had made a correct decision. Darren, he said with unusual respect. Zuemo was still immersed in the satisfaction from defeating the illusory technique with the bone-crushing obscuring wind. Zuemo knew some of the little thousand-leaf hands. At the beginning, Pu Yao had taught him 5 moves, and then periodically taught a few more here and there. However, Zuemo always felt that the effect of little thousand-leaf hands was average, even less than the sky glass wave, and was far cry from the great Daemo physique. However, this time, he experienced the exquisiteness of little thousand-leaf hands. If he was familiar with the move, he would have defeated the other's illusory technique with one bone-crushing obscuring wind. Would he have needed to cast it 4 times? Zuemo finally recalled that the great and little thousand-leaf hands were created by a sky Yao, and naturally was extraordinary. Just a half-learned illusory technique and dare to show off in front of GE, they don't want to live. If she knew GE's glorious battles in illusory formations, she definitely wouldn't dare. Before GE learned bone-crushing obscuring wind, GE still defeated the illusory technique of the 100-Flower Alliance. Zuemo felt very proud. The only grudge he had left was the paper crane girl. If he encountered the paper crane girl now, he would definitely pin her down on the ground and then beat her until her head swelled like a pig's head, get a batch of jingsher off her, and then use a similar illusory technique on her before letting her go. Darren. Zhangzhe did not discover that Zuemo was still in his fantasy and said with the utmost respect. The clan has agreed to give Darren 10 golden souls annually as tribute. Good. Zuemo refocused and was overjoyed. He hurriedly asked. When will you give the golden souls to me? Zhangzhe suddenly had a feeling that he seemed to have met a conman. Darren wasn't a conman, right? He muttered inside but did not show any of it on his face. He carefully reminded, Darren, do you remember the gray scar art? Oh, right, wait a moment. Zuemo hurriedly found Pu Yao. Pu Yao's eye at this moment was like a hungry wolf that gleamed eerily. He stared at Zuemo for a while without a word. Zuemo's hair rose under his gaze. He muttered inside, was Pu Yao also going to cast an illusory technique? Pu Yao stared at Zuemo for a while before shaking his head and saying to himself, black-hearted, really black-hearted. Speaking of this, Zuemo's spine instantly became straight. He instantly said, full of disdain, getting the benefit and you still complain. If you feel it's black, take 1 less golden soul. Pu Yao's mouth was instantly tightly closed. Right, the more we make, the more we can divide. Zuemo had an expression like he was teaching a child. He reached out. Give it. What? Pu Yao instinctively asked. Gray scar art. Don't you want the golden souls? Oh. Pu Yao instinctively threw a ball of light at Zuemo, and give me that South Sky arrow art, along with it so I don't have to run over again. Oh. Another ball of light. Zuemo contentedly left the sea of consciousness before Pu Yao could react. You antique from thousands of years ago, how can you fight with GE? Don't you know that GE is the sun at 8 or 9? The present is GE's, the future is GE's, all of it is GE's. Before the satisfied Zuemo could make the transaction, a cold voice interrupted. You are the master of the wasteland beast chessboard. A male Yao covered in blue marks stared coldly at Zuemo. The master of the wasteland beast chessboard? Zuemo rolled his eyes but did not answer him. He asked Zhangzhe. When will we carry out the transaction? The blue Yao swept Zhangzhe and said neutrally, the Grey clan is very daring to dare be enemies against our genius alliance. Zhangzhe's pupils suddenly shrunk. Genius alliance? Sire, who are you? Qinghua Zhang Shui, the blue Yao said faintly. Zhangzhe's body shook and a layer of fine sweat began to cover his forehead. His business disturbed, Zuemo instantly became discontent. He flipped his hand, and a little stool appeared. He shoved it in front of the blue Yao. Hold this. N. Qinghua Zhang Shui looked with puzzlement at the stool made from Yao arts. His gaze flashed. It was very rough and simple. Was he planning to compete in Yao arts? Zuemo pointed. There, take the stool. Go to the corner and draw circles. Qinghua Zhang Shui's indigo face instantly became red. In an instant, his mind turned blank. Humiliated, he had actually been humiliated. Chapter 368, Battle of Tongues. As the exceptional successor of the young generation of the Blue Flower family, Qinghua Zhang Shui had a talent unrivaled within the clan. Cloud Ridge Blue Flower had been a famed and influential clan that flourished for thousands of years and never declined. Each generation had outstanding descendants. If they went back a few hundred years, the Blue Flower clan had occupied a seat on the Council of Elders that oversaw the entire Yao world. The present Blue Flower did not have the status of its past, but it was still a large sect that was firmly established and admired. Compared to them, the Grey clan was just a wild, little clan from some backwater mountain, so when Sangze heard the other's name, he instantly became silent. Usually, just based on the words, Cloud Ridge Blue Flower, Qinghua Zhang Shui could charge recklessly anywhere. When had he ever been humiliated so? When had the Blue Flower family ever been humiliated like this? Qinghua Zhang Shui was so ashamed that he could die. A burst of hot blood rushed into his head. His eyes glaring, he pointed at Zuemo and gritted, "Those that humiliate my Blue Flower family shall die." Zuemo rolled his eyes. Are you mental? Am I humiliating your Blue Flower family? So, the anger in Qinghua Zhang Shui's chest calmed slightly before he was interrupted by Zuemo, "Who I am humiliating is you." Zuemo looked at Qinghua Zhang Shui like he was looking at an idiot and said mockingly, "Just a person like you aren't ashamed to be called a genius? Don't come out to frighten people. Oh, you definitely want to kill me right now, I know this. So, people like you only have this little bit of patience, only this bit of breadth of chest. Compete with me." He suddenly increased his volume. "What qualifications do you have to compete with me? Does the Blue Flower family have more face than other people? You who eat soft rice, go and break the prison. Don't bother me before you break the prison. Gu is very busy, understand?" Qinghua Zhang Shui's face flushed, turned black and then white. His entire figure wavered unsteadily. Pooh! Qinghua Zhang Shui's blurred figure suddenly exploded into a ball of light and disappeared. Zuemo shook his head and sighed. He is mentally weak, his mind is really low in quality. Turning around his face, he looked at the gaping Nanyu and Sangze. He said, "Ooh, let's continue." "Ah!" A shriek filled with fury came from the room. Ji Qing stopped in his steps and then forced himself to push open the door. Pia! An extremely fine crystal decoration smashed loudly beside his feet into countless pieces. Ji Qing did not dare to block the shrapnel and allowed the crystal shards to hit his body. He wore a smile as he said in a fawning tone, "Sis, what is the matter? Who made you so angry? I'll go beat him up. Grind his bones into powder, skin him and pluck out his tendons." His voice suddenly stopped. Ji Liu stared fiercely at him. Whoa! Old Sis's angry face was filled with killing intent. In that pair of eyes that enchanted countless male Yao was burning fire. Heavens! Ji Qing felt his scalp tighten. He had never seen old Sis so angry ever. He didn't know which pitiful person had infuriated old Sis. So pitiful. In her anger, old Sis did not recognize anyone. Ji Qing was filled with regret. Why had he been so dumb to stare down the barrel of this gun? Ji Qing knew the time to show his loyalty had come. He pretended to be angry and said, "Sis, don't be so anxious. I'll go send for people. They dare to provoke my sis, they must not want to live. Ji Liyu stared at Ji Cheng for a while, which caused Ji Cheng's hairs to stand up. All right. Don't act in front of me. Ji Liyu snorted coldly and sat down. There was still anger on her face, but she finally calmed down. She propped up her chin, and it was unknown if she was in a daze or considering something. Ji Cheng released a deep sigh inside. The most dangerous moment had passed. However, he knew that if he left at this time, he would definitely receive retribution. He carefully and curiously went forward. What happened? Which saint had caused old sis to be so furious? That skill wasn't just high. Ji Cheng was full of admiration towards this unknown expert to the point of kowtowing to his or her skills. Of course, he didn't dare to show any of it on his face. My charm clothing was defeated. Ji Liyu said lightly. Ah! Ji Cheng was stunned. He was sincerely concerned now. Are you wounded? No. Ji Cheng released a breath but still wasn't able to believe it. How is it possible? How can charm clothing be defeated? The Ji family's sky clothing was full of transformations and was one of the few remaining earth-level Yao arts in the Yao world. Many of the parts had been previously lost. Afterwards, the Ji family had founded the Sky Clothing Yao Art House. Under accumulation of research and study over years, they finally recovered the original appearance. There were 9 transformations of the Sky Clothing. Charm clothing was one of them. But compared to the Emperor clothing and Domination clothing of the Ji family, those that knew the charm clothing were the least common. Of the generations of Ji family disciples, there were rarely those who cultivated the charm clothing. The conditions to cultivate charm clothing were extremely strict. It demanded that the one cultivating it was naturally beautiful with a flawless consciousness, but the most important part was that their heart had to be as clean as jade and untainted. The purer the heart, the stronger the power was in their hands. Even in the Ji family, it was one of the most tightly guarded secrets that Ji Liyu had successfully cultivated, charm clothing. There were less than 5 people who knew. The most powerful quality of the charm clothing was that it was intangible and invisible as it affected others. It was one of the best illusory arts. Using the power of the charm clothing, Ji Liyu lived a good life. Ever since she was little, she was someone who had always been liked by all. After entering the Yao art house, she became blinding and dazzling. She was the dream lover of countless young and accomplished Yao. The second year she entered the Yao art house, she entered the Genius Alliance and received attention from the leader of the Genius Alliance, Ming Yuyi. The third year, she entered the Genius Alliance Council of Elders and became the youngest elder in the Alliance's history. After becoming the youngest elder of the Genius Alliance, she was appointed by Ming Yuyi as the Relations Minister of the Genius Alliance and was specifically in charge of recruiting talent. She had completely utilized the powers of the charm clothing. These years, she had outstanding results, and her seat as an elder was rock solid. Even as the successor of the Ji family and someone stronger, Ji Cheng still lived in her shadow. No one other than Ji Cheng, who also cultivated sky clothing, knew how powerful charm clothing was. From a certain perspective, it was a nearly undetectable illusory art, and its effects directly gripped the heart. He had personally seen countless vicious serial killers and mass murders face old sis with a face full of warmth. What kind of monster could bear to attack her? It is that prison-breaking Yao. Ji Liyu's expression was slightly ugly. Prison-breaking Yao. Ji Cheng stilled and then reacted in a moment. He stammered, the master of the wasteland beast chessboard. Old sis, why did you provoke him? Did Ming Yi send you to deal with him? It shouldn't be so. When did it become the elder's turn to attack? Who said we are attacking him? Ji Liyu rolled her eyes, and her expression became even uglier. The masses are talking so much about our failures. If the prison-breaking Yao joined the Genius Alliance at this moment, what expression do you think those people would have? Ji Cheng pondered it for a while and then nodded. This move is great. Completely pulling the carpet from beneath them. And then? You went to find him. And, I had people keeping watch on that little girl called Nanyu. Ji Li Yu's expression suddenly became black as she gritted. I just spoke, and that guy instantly flipped. Without a word, he used 4 attacks of a very strange Yao art. Attacked without a word. Ji Chang's expression became slightly strange. Old sis, is this a romantic debt that you left behind in the past? Ji Li Yu's eyes glared and frightened Ji Cheng to shrink his head back into his neck. But he could not bear his own curiosity and said, and then? Nothing. Nothing. Ji Cheng was confused. I was directly thrown out of the Wasteland Beast chessboard. Directly thrown out of the Wasteland Beast chessboard, Ji Cheng stammered and then inhaled sharply. Whoa, this guy was that vicious? The first meeting and he threw old sis out of the Wasteland Beast chessboard without a word. On pain of his death, Ji Cheng could promise old sis wouldn't easily let this matter go. He carefully asked. Old sis, what are you planning to do now? This isn't finished. Ji Li Yi spat out with a dark face. In this instant, Ji Cheng was filled with sympathy for that vicious prison-breaking brother. Qinghua Zongshui's body uncontrollably trembled, his teeth were creaking. He was going mad from anger. He had been humiliated. The Blue Flower family had been humiliated. Eating soft rice, no qualifications. The words were like a poisonous snake continuously tearing and consuming his peerlessly proud heart. He suddenly raised his head, those who humiliate me, die. That right now wasn't good. Sang Zhe weakly said. He suddenly remembered who that seductive female Yao was. His heart had almost stopped breathing. He suddenly felt that the decision by the elders was a humongous mistake. Darren's conduct was completely unpredictable. In the blink of an eye, he had offended 2 big families. The Ji family and Blue Flower family. Heavens! Either of these families could lift a little finger and swept the Grey clan out. He had just watched as Darren had humiliated the 2 big families. His heart was freezing cold. We need to save time. Zuemo said unconcernedly, who has the time to waste on these nobodies? Nobodies, the Ji family and the Blue Flower family were nobodies. Sang Zhe trembled. Just this matter was enough to create a conflict where blood would flow like rivers. He intelligently skipped past this problem. If he let Darren keep talking, the matter would become even worse. He finally understood the meaning of disaster coming from the mouth. Are you the prison-breaking Yao? A weak voice passed over. Why are you guys so irritating? Zuemo was completely irritated by these people that constantly interrupted him. He turned around, and swore all over. Ah! The female yelled and retreated 5 steps in fear. When Zuemo saw this was just a normal female, his anger instantly dissipated, but his tone was still slightly unfriendly. What is it? You really are the prison-breaking Yao? The little girl gathered her courage and asked. Prison-breaking Yao? If you mean the prison-breaking battle, yes, it's me, said Zuemo impatiently. If you have something to say it quickly. Otherwise leave. Seeing that a big transaction was just going to be completed but being successively interrupted by others, Zuemo's mood could be imagined. Wow! Great! The little girl was so excited she almost jumped up. I am a reporter for the Tomorrow Yao channel, can I interview you? Interview? Zuemo stilled. He thought about it and then said openly. No problem, but you have to pay. Just a reminder, GE's price is very high. The little girl immediately turned to stone. Sang Zhe and Nanyu covered their faces and could not bear to watch. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.